You don't have a printed agenda, do you, by any chance?
I do.
Extra?
I do.
Yeah, there's not much on it. There should have been a bunch of stuff. Thank you. Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's Farmington School Board meeting. It is November 23rd. Will you all please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
justice for all.
Thank you. First on our agenda is public comment, and first I'm going to open it up to members who are here in attendance, and then we'll go online. And I just want to paraphrase, it appears we may have several people who want to speak, so please be brief and to the point. So if you'd like to step up to the mic and give us your name and the street that you live on. And
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jimmy Bork from Chipmunk Lane. I ask that you please let me complete my statement uninterrupted, and at the end of my statement, we can discuss any points or questions that you might have for me. I come before you today to ask you to reverse your decision to require all remote by choice students to be back in person on February 1st. I am asking for you to keep remote by choice through the school year or when a vaccine is widely available and it is completely safe for the children to return. By taking away remote by choice on February 1st, you'll be leaving tax-paying families that have legitimate reasons to go remote out in the dust. They'll be shut out of the school system in the middle of the year during a raging pandemic and forced to fend for themselves. When you said that you would revisit the motion in the future, you left all of those families in limbo, not knowing what they were going to have to do in the coming months. That is not good enough, and it's putting undue stress on those families. We need the assurance that remote by choice will be an option for as long as families need it to keep safe. VLAX and many other homeschool programs are completely full. So you left families two options: either send their children in person when facts show that it's not completely safe for the families, or rip the children away from their teachers and leave them to start over with their own curriculum in the middle of the school year with no help from the school system. The fact is, cases are higher than they've been before and dangerously climbing everywhere. Farmington has been adding cases almost daily, with up to 25 active cases in the recent days, according to state statistics. A vaccine will not be widely available for several months. We may have been lucky with a low amount of cases in the schools so far that the public knows of, but that does not mean the schools are completely safe by a long shot. I was on the task force for the school reopening plan back in the summer. And as you know, the task force included parents, teachers, administrators. We sat through many hours of meetings, and one of the major important things that we had all strongly agreed upon was to have remote by choice included in every phase, with the exception of phase 5, which was in person with no restrictions. I even had a face-to-face conversation with you, Mr. Brown, at the town meeting, and you assured my wife and I that remote by choice would be an option until things were completely safe for our children. Even parents that were against remote learning back then were in favor of remote by choice option for families who wanted it. If there are a couple of teachers having a hard time by remote by choice, the answer isn't just to get rid of the whole option and desert the many children and families who depend on it. There are definitely other ways to help those teachers. I have spoken to both of my children's teachers, one at Valley View and one at Henry Wilson, and both have had nothing but great things to say about the remote experience. The model at Valley View has been working like clockwork. Each grade has one remote teacher, and my experience with my daughter's class has been excellent. The teachers, children, and parents all work together to ensure a smooth learning experience. My daughter's grade even has shared meetings with other remote grades in Valley View in classes like art and music, and it seems that those grades are having no problem with remote learning either. My other daughter's remote experience at Henry Wilson has been going smoothly. Any minor bumps over the months were easily worked out. She has had no problem following along with her class, and her teachers have done an excellent job at making sure she's included in everything that they are doing. Remote learning is not going away now or in the future. It is here to stay. You guys know that. You have already said that it will be used when needed. It is going to be used for snow days in the future, and it was even used as a solution today when school buses were not available to get children to school. If it can be used for the convenience of the school board and the administration, I think the decision to strip it away as an option for families who are worried about their health and the health of their family is a hypocritical decision. I, as many others in the community, feel the motion and decision came out of nowhere. It was not on the agenda, there was no public input, and it was basically brought up out of the blue, deep into the meeting. It was discussed by about 10 minutes and was decided based on hearsay of a couple of unnamed teachers and reckless misinformation about COVID-19. Mr. Whitehouse's highly racial insensitive remarks were full of misinformation. Saying the virus risk is lower than the seasonal flu is just outright false. Children are catching this virus and passing it on to others. According to the New Hampshire official statistics, there are many cases in children reported daily. Just this Saturday, New Hampshire reported 52 new cases in children. Facts show that COVID is much more contagious than the flu and way more deadly. Just under 15,000 people died from the flu last year. Over 257,000 have died from COVID in the past 9 months and rising, 1,000 to 2,000 people a day. And for somebody, an elected official, to come out and say that it's less worry than the flu is outrageous. I'm sure that the 257,000 plus who have died and the millions of Americans who have lost a loved one to COVID-19, that's the official name for it, do not feel that this virus is overblown. Also saying that no cases have been traced back to the schools without proof is very misleading. Truth is, without extensive contact tracing in the state or the country, there's no way of knowing exactly where all of the Farmington cases came from. In last week's meeting, Ruth Allen stated that there wasn't a 100% way of knowing if cases had been traced back to the schools. The fact is, we've had cases in the schools, maybe more than we're aware of, and it's not even nearly completely safe. I also think that the board did not take in consideration that if remote by choice is taken away, a lot of families will be forced to withdraw from the school system, taking away sorely needed funding from the state. Taking remote by choice away will harm many and help little. If remote learning can be used for the convenience of the school system, there is no reason why it cannot be used for the tax-paying families who believe that they need it to keep their families safe. I am asking for you to please pass a motion to keep the remote by choice option for the rest of the school year. By then, a vaccine will hopefully be widely available and we can have everyone back to in-person learning in the fall of 2021. The number one priority in this situation is to make sure that all the children and staff are completely safe. Taking away remote by choice does not ensure that priority. Thank you for your time and thanks for hearing me out.
Okay, I'm going to state this again. Please have a seat, sir.
Okay.
Please be brief with your comments and professional and courteous. And if you're not, I will ask you to stop speaking and sit down. Anyone else?
I was professional.
Please go up to the mic.
Hi, everyone. My name is Penny Rulo-Glidden. I have a 8th grader, a 1st grader, and a preschooler who are also participating in the remote option. All 3 of them have special needs or underlying medical conditions, 2 of which have IEPs. I'll try to it's hard to be brief with such an important thing, but I will try. I first want to say that I don't think that having a differing opinion than someone else makes you disrespectful. I find that having a differing opinion just means that there's more to discuss on the table and that everyone should kind of play a role in making decisions. One of the things that I want to start off on a light note is there is no one more than a mother of 3 boys that wants their children back in school. That said, I chose remote not just for my children's health, but also for the staff and the other students and community members. In the last 3 days, so over the weekend, there were over 1,300 cases in New Hampshire, 6 deaths, 19 of those were active cases here in Farmington. So I think it is absolutely within common sense to have a discussion about not at this time taking away the remote by choice option. Governor Sununu himself issued a mandatory mask mandate. And the issue with COVID is that you really don't know how you're going to react to it until you get it. So in my opinion, most of the schools in the surrounding areas are doing kind of the opposite. They're taking more precautions. They're having to go to remote either because of COVID cases, COVID exposure, or because they've decided that it makes the most sense based on the rising numbers in the communities all across the nation and the world. So I'm asking also that virtual learning be something that can stay on the for the formidable future. I feel that, you know, to just go from being a online remote learner to homeschooling is a totally different ballgame. Not everyone has that the equippedness to do the homeschooling. What happens to children with underlying medical conditions or IEP? How will they receive their special ed services? Those are things that I feel like I don't know, and I feel like I'm pretty in the know with regard to homeschooling. I don't know the answers to those questions. What happens if there's an outbreak or a suspected exposure? At this time, families, and if they're healthy and staff is healthy, they can opt to do the remote during that 2-week quarantine time frame. Doing away with remote will likely cause attendance issues and possibly leave the school short-staffed. So that's another concern that I have. And I also have a concern just about the school's ability to provide the amount of PPE and wipes and simple things needed to ensure that sanitation and safety is a high priority. I know that the teachers right now are doing their best, but they are providing some of their own money to supply to keep up with demand. I'm also concerned about the fact that it's hard enough at this point to keep that minimal 3 feet apart standard. So I'm worried if we add the children back in, how are we going to maintain that? And I think everybody here agrees that the best practice is to have our children back and in school learning. None of us have ever been through any of this type of situation before, but it's a time to work through the challenges in a way that makes sense for everyone. And I think keeping remote by choice and supporting staff and families so that everyone can do their jobs, it seems like a logical decision. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Somebody else is here in person.
Mr. Chair.
Hold on,
Mr. Chair. Okay.
hold on. I'm letting people who are in attendance speak first, and then we'll reach out to people who are online. Hold on. Sir, go up and please state your name for the record and the street you live on.
Hi, my name's Stephen Pascucci, and I'm a teacher here at Farmington. I've been a teacher here for 12 years. And I wanted to address a few things that I've been hearing coming out of the meetings here. It's very disappointing, frustrating. Your teachers are working extremely hard. Every single one of them. There are no exceptions. Things look different to different people, and working hard looks different to different people, but everybody here is maxing out. We're working very, very hard. I myself, because we lost a teacher, I haven't had a prep in 3 weeks, all right? So we're all covering for people that are out. We've had teachers that are out, and we are moving the pieces around without adequate resources. Are we making it happen? We are. But we're working really, really hard. And because people are frustrated, or because people have a point of view that they're hoping to get, certain, whether it's safety measures, they don't feel it being followed, or any other type of compromise that they're hoping for, doesn't justify, in my opinion, any kind of criticism of the teachers, how hard they're working. I think that there's a lot of anxiety. I think that there's a lot of concern about not being heard effectively. I think we could be doing a better job of hearing each other effectively without shutting people down. And I think we could be doing a better job of being proactive about making sure other people are heard effectively, even if we're going to disagree about things. The negative things that get said at this meeting and other places, unfortunately, there's a lot of stuff going around on media, has an impact on our community and it has an impact on our students. We already know that our students are struggling an awful lot and that families are struggling an awful lot. And to have the negative feelings echoed over and again, really demoralizing, is difficult to deal with, especially when we're out here maxing it out every single day. We really need to hear something different coming from our leadership.
Mr. Chairman?
I will say a couple of other points. I think the woman was right. I think that teaching online and in the classroom is not easy. It's hard, but it's also a new opportunity for Farmington and many other schools out there. A lot of different ways to learn out there. And there is an opportunity towards the future, and Farmington has been struggling. Can't ignore that. The better that we meet the individual family needs, the better we're going to be as a community, the more inclusive we're going to be. That includes using inclusive language that doesn't separate us. And if a student learns better at home, then if we're in support of students being able to choose the school that they want to go to, then why not be in favor of choosing the mode with which they'd like to learn if this is truly in their best interests. And health is a top priority. It is a number one priority for a lot of families. It's more important than education, is the lives of their kids. We've been fortunate here. We've kept most people healthy, and it's a blessing. But if something were to happen to one of these kids, break our hearts. We can't run those kind of risks, and some parents are being really, really careful with that, and we need to respect that. I think the choice to bring everybody in was impulsive, and it needs to be revisited. And finally, with regards to some of the comments that were made about going remote over the holidays, that's a really hard decision to make. That's a hard decision. I don't know what the right answer to that is, but what I can tell you is that there are a lot of people out there that haven't seen their families in a long time. And I'm going to be one of them. My dad's in a nursing home. I haven't seen him since February. I can't see my brother for the holidays because he lives in Massachusetts, and I can't see my family for the holidays because they live in Rhode Island. I get no quarantine time whatsoever, and I'm the only one in my family up here in New Hampshire. So I am left to video with people, which is great, and I make the most of it, but it's not the same as going down to Rhode Island and hugging people and saying hi to people and being able to be with the people that you love. And I think that that needs to be revisited as well in a more deliberate fashion and addressed in a way that doesn't shut people down and leave people feeling like they're being taken advantage of. I don't want to skirt the rules, and I don't want anybody else to skirt the rules. That's important to me. But when people feel taken advantage of, and they feel mistreated and unheard, that's when you're going to get people that, you know what, I can go see my brother, and I can go see my family in Rhode Island, and you know what, you're not going to know about it. And neither is the state. So really, we're working on people's good honor. And for that, we need to be treating people well.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, we've been 20 minutes in. I'm going to allow two more people, one here and one online. Please come up and please be brief, because this is not going past another 10 minutes. We have a lot of things to do budgetarily tonight, and we need to get it done.
Hi, my name is Marian DiToronto. I'm a teacher here at the high school, and I won't repeat a lot of what I have heard, but I feel the same way as what I'm hearing in the community. I actually think it's going very well. At least I feel this is a great opportunity, as Stephen said, for our students. There's a lot of benefits to students learning remotely and in the classroom. Kids learn flexibility. They learn empathy. Students foster an understanding. It doesn't mean that the quality of the education is not there. It just means it's different. And in the future, this is where colleges and universities and high schools are going, is towards online learning. So it's a great opportunity. In our school, we have digital immigrants, which means that the students do not have this technology opportunity from a very early age. They get it later on. So they're also struggling with a lot of these things that we're doing. Digital natives would be those students that come in and they've got all of this together. But for us, it's a great opportunity, and the kids can learn, they can take this challenge on and do very well with it. I am happy with the way that we're doing both the remote and the in-person learning. I am concerned for safety, and I am also concerned that as we approach the holidays, that there has to be some way that we can compromise or come to some sort of a decision. We service the community through the students. The administration makes sure that we can do that, and you're our liaisons. You have to help us. It is a really tough decision. But again, I have a 96-year-old mother that's turning 97, and I can't figure out a way how I'm going to see her. I want to see her while she's still good. She's healthy as can be right now. I was trying to push it out till April, but as I hear people talk, if we were to have some sort of a set time to do something where we all can see our families, because I would have to quarantine before I see her and then quarantine before I come back into the state. I would like to have a way to do that and be respectful of my students and the community that I service, because I really do enjoy it here.
Thank you. At this point, I'll open it up to some members online. Like I said, please be brief and to the point and respectful of the people here in attendance. So.
Okay, we have two people who have had their hand up since we started. Wanda Pelkey, would you like to go first, please? And then Jolene Landers, and that's what we have.
Go ahead, Wanda.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to make it as brief as I can. Dear school board members and community, my name is Wanda Pelkey. I live on 10 Rod Road in Farmington. I've been a resident for 29 years, school employee for 22 years, and a first grade teacher at Farmington for 20 years. Along with everybody else in March, I became a remote teacher, and then I volunteered to be the remote teacher for first grade for this school year. My understanding was that it would be for the whole school year, with families having the option of reevaluating their decision after a period of time, and could change to in-person if they felt that to be a better decision for their family. I came to the meeting today to share with board members and the community some very positive things that they may not have known about remote learning at Valley View and why it's working at our school. First and foremost, health and safety for the families I now work with, and for myself. That was the first reason for choosing remote learning. We have good collaboration with my first grade team and with Mr. McGurty, at least once a week with Mr. McGurty and the team, and the first grade teachers when students leave. We talk about important events that will be happening, any concerns that the team may have, any modifications needed to remote learning. So those students are included in what skills we'll be covering for the upcoming weeks, which I incorporate into my remote learning via Google Classroom. We have good collaboration with the remote learning team, which is from K to 3rd, and Mr. McGurty. At least once a week, formally, and other times during the week informally, I meet with the other remote teachers, K through 3rd, and Mr. McGurty, as well as the unified arts teacher for that week. We go over what's working and what can be improved upon. The teaching, which is continuous learning, adjusting, and flexibility. In addition to Google Classroom as my main platform, I also use Class Dojo for communication and various assignments for teaching. My students have assigned iPads, whiteboards, practice books, and writing journals, so they have a balance of paper and technology. We use district-approved applications such as eSparks, Mystery Science, and Scholastic News for further enhancement of their education. The family collaboration, the families I have are truly dedicated to their child or children's education. They're there within hearing distance of instruction and for when assistance is needed. In addition to this, they help me with technology as well as each other. The Unified Arts and Guidance. Unified Arts teachers have been extremely flexible as we all navigate the remote learning style. Some have made a separate classroom for students that are able to transfer from one classroom to another, while others come into the grade level remote classroom to teach their lessons. Mrs. Williams, our guidance counselor, also does both. She has her own classroom and comes into classrooms to teach social and emotional learning, among other things, remotely. I'm not saying that there haven't been challenges. There have been plenty. Glitchy technology, iPads needing updates, iPads not staying charged, even when they've been plugged in all night. Students not being able to hear the Unified Arts teachers at times. Assignments turned in, but not showing up. Like I said, plenty of challenges. So how can I say remote learning is working? Because for each of these challenges, we learn a little more, we put in tech tickets, and they fix some of the problems. We talk with each other and brainstorm. I've had that problem. This is what I did. What do you do? Mr. McGurty has really stepped in and stepped up to talk with families and also talk and write to the tech department. And his door is always open for our staff. And in spite of these challenges, the students are not just learning academics, but they are connecting with each other. They are learning patience, tolerance, how to be responsible, going from one classroom to another remotely, and they're getting confidence and that they are able to do remote learning. I've had family involvement. I've been working here for 20 years as a first grade teacher, and I've always had family involvement. Okay, but I have to tell you, I've never had family involvement to the extent that my remote families are involved, from moms to dads to uncles to aunts to grandparents, from older siblings helping with technology and directions to younger siblings being involved when we take movement breaks, to child care providers being there providing additional encouragement and guidance. Everyone is taking part. This model is working for our school. I truly don't know how the other schools can teach both in person and remote at the same time, full time. You amaze me. I have heard from my families that have children of varying ages. Remote learning is working on some of the classes in the upper grades. So what is the true solution? It truly is not just a school effort, but a school, home, and district collaboration that makes our remote learning work. So before thinking about bringing people back in person, please consider the old adage, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate, I know it took a couple minutes, but thank you. Kind of nerve-wracking being in front of everybody, but thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Positive things
Thank you,
for
Wanda.
some remote learning.
So we have time for one more. Go ahead.
Hi, Jolene Landers. I just wanted to read an email I sent to the school board and Ruth Ellen today, sort of echoing these few participants. Mr. Chairman, after the district staff meeting Mrs. Vaughn held on Friday and listening to the teachers and staff members' concerns, I wanted to reach out and make a request. There are many staff members, including myself, who are concerned about coming back to school after the Thanksgiving break and subsequent Christmas break. We can't guarantee that parents, staff, aren't opening up their homes to family members near or far. This then increases the risk of COVID exposure. Unfortunately, both Staff and parents may not always be honest in completing the screening when coming back to school. While there is nothing we can do about this, it certainly increases the risk. Staff members are overwhelmed, as you have heard over the past two board meetings. Your attempt to relieve this was to make all students return from remote learning. While there are many options and no one will agree, all I can say in speaking with some parents who are remote by choice is they are very unhappy. This change does not necessarily relieve the overall stress for staff members. Many staff members spoke about needing to see their family members during the holidays to support their mental health and relieve their stress level. Others made points about already having to give up so much of their family time by working beyond contracted hours to provide adequate education in this in-person remote collaboration. Many staff members did not appreciate the tone of the message presented by Mrs. Vaughn, which was no doubt a directive of the board. When staff members asked about going remote for 2 weeks after Thanksgiving and 2 weeks after Christmas, Mrs. Vaughn reminded staff that this was not something the board was in support of. Mrs. Laurel Vachon asked if this could be put on the agenda for a vote. Mrs. Vaughn noted that this was your agenda and urged all staff members to reach out to you to request this issue to be discussed as part of the board meeting and a subsequent vote. She also urged staff members to attend the board meeting tonight to share their concerns. So this is why I'm reaching out to you today. If there's a possibility of adding it to the agenda. I thank you for your consideration and efforts in this very difficult time. As an aside, I have been working in this school district for 18 years. I am often a sounding board for staff members to share their emotions and seek advice. As Ms. DeAngelis stated 2 board meetings ago, their mental health is being tested. So as you can imagine, I have spoken to many staff members about their mental health and stress. Please show them your support and allow them to seek some comfort with their family over the holidays without worrying about the restrictions and risk other staff or students may be bringing into the school. Out of an abundance of caution, I urge the board to consider going to remote learning for 2 weeks after Thanksgiving break and 2 weeks after Christmas break. The number of COVID cases are steadily rising. I thank you all for your time.
Okay, thank you. At this point, I'm going to stop the public portion of this meeting and open it up to any members from the board that want to comment or discuss anything they heard. Tim, I know you had something you wanted to say.
I just got 2 brief comments. One is, listening to the concerns, the head of the CDC had a news conference this morning at 10 a.m. and emphatically stated to the public that the safest place for our children is in our school buildings. Secondly, later on in the meeting, I requested some stats, and we hear how great remote learning is going. And the fact is, we've got a significant number of students that have failed 1 or more classes. So our duty as a school board is to provide for the education of our children, is to do that in the safest means possible. What we're doing now either needs significant work or it needs to go away. But I'm not happy with the numbers that I saw, and those numbers will come out in hopefully discussion later on during the meeting.
Is that it, Tim? Josh, Stan, or Joel, any discussion on the public comment?
This is Stan. I would certainly be in favor of revisiting it and listening to what the public has to say. And I'm a supporter of remote learning anyway, so I think that we're doing a good job, and I would listen to the teachers and listen to the people of the town.
Stan?
Go ahead, Tim.
Excuse me?
Who's that next?
Joel.
Joel, go ahead, Joel.
I would just
First of all, I'd like to thank the folks that came out to speak, and Mr. King, I believe there's another public session at the end of the meeting.
No, there wasn't one on our agenda, but depending on how late we go, we typically have one. This agenda was written, typically we would have one, but...
I think it's policy to have one, but anyway, thank you for coming out and expressing your concerns. This is the right way to do it, and not on community forums. However, I will just say that when this, I think what people need to realize is that Mr. Brown prefaced his motion at the last meeting regarding remote learning and shooting for a date to bring kids back. As the reason for doing it was concern for teacher stress level, which we have repeatedly heard, whether it be at public meetings, whether it be in negotiation meetings, or whether it be through emails and personal discussions with teachers. So I looked at that vote as a very preliminary move to look at a potential date of that possibility. Having said, I believe during discussion, we would certainly look at it more closely as that date approached. That was 2.5 months out. Anything can change by then. It happened back in August when we originally made those votes to either go remote or to come back fully. So that certainly can change as data comes in. I'm a little concerned that some staff members are under the impression that remote was a full year option. I don't remember the board saying that. It baffles me how that message got out. Maybe someone needs to refresh my memory on something. The other thing that I think is important, Mr. King, to point out is, even with the staff members that presented tonight, there are two sides. There are two sides of feeling this way and that way, okay? I think it's important for people to know that the reason that I supported that motion and voted for it last week was because I was concerned with what I was hearing from staff members and trying to pick maybe a preliminary goal down the road of giving them some light at the end of the tunnel for going back to one instruction or the other, and not both at the same time. But I appreciate everybody's input, and I certainly will take it to heart when we discuss it further.
Josh, any thoughts?
I'm all set, thanks.
Tim, you had something else?
I'm all set.
Excuse me?
I also want to appreciate everybody for giving us their thoughts. As I responded by email, anybody that sent me an email, we certainly keep it under consideration. I'm sure we're going to be discussing this as we move along. I know, Ruth Ellen, you had a staff meeting you may want to talk about. I know it was mentioned by somebody. Just so people are aware, that was not given.
It was not a board directive.
It was not a board directive.
No.
I was aware of the Ruth Ellen was going to have the discussion, and I personally agree with it because we're trying to do the best to ensure that we can provide the education, and without people being here, staff, we won't be able to do that. So that's where the direct, not a directive, but that's where the concern comes from. But go ahead, Ruth Ellen.
On Thursday afternoon, I called a staff meeting for all staff. It was not required as it was after hours, but it was open to all staff members. In that meeting, I reiterated the DHHS travel guidelines. These are not board directives. This is a state requirement. I reminded staff that, and if someone still has a mic open, if you could mute that, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Yes, but whoever's been on the phone, you can hit *6 to mute your stuff that's coming in from the phone line, so I've not been able to mute it. I've been trying. So if you are on a phone and it ends in 53, if you could hit *6 to mute. Thank you.
Thank you.
Those guidelines have remained largely the same for New Hampshire residents since August. They were updated again on November 12th. I sent out copies to the staff and reminded them that travel over the holidays would need to be curtailed or would result in a needed quarantine, as our staffing issues when we have people out have been in large part what has contributed to the stress of their colleagues. I reminded people that it was important for them to take this seriously. I understand that it is a tremendous sacrifice not to be with families during the holidays. I myself am not traveling to see my kids, and I understand it's tough. And I appreciate the sacrifice of my staff. And thought I had communicated that, but if I did not, I will reiterate that here. I know how hard you're working. I see it every single day, and it matters. But it also matters that our contributions to the safety of our community mean something. And it matters that our word, when we've said this is what we're going to do, is what we do. I need to be able to trust you that you're going to do the right thing. And I do trust you. That matters.
Okay, moving along, we have a bunch.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, who's that?
Josh.
Go ahead.
I'll say a couple things. One, out of the remote kids, we know that, is it 50%, Ruth Ellen, that are failing one or more classes?
There are, grab that paper. For the high school, the numbers are
Yes.
higher. Where did that go?
I was trying to kind of, I know this was kind of done relatively quickly, but I was trying to figure that out by the numbers given.
Got the numbers here if you'd like them.
Thank you. I have them here, but
We have 37
they're there.
high school students in remote out of 75 students that have flunked one or more classes.
Correct.
We have 23 at the Henry Wilson School out of 78 in remote that have flunked one or more classes. We have 12 at the Henry Wilson School that are in person that have flunked one or more classes. And we have 45 in-person failures at the high school for one or more classes.
So was there any statistics for students that were at a higher risk that may have been failing 2 or more classes? Was there any differentiating done? I don't see it here, but.
I didn't put that here. I will say that it was split about half, it was just one, and then the other half had multiple failures.
So if I were to expound on what you just said, then if we look at Henry Wilson, that.
I was looking at the high school.
Okay,
there.
well,
Yeah.
I'll start with Henry Wilson.
Okay.
Because I think it's a little bit, it's certainly the results are a little bit better. In person, we only have less than 10%, looks like maybe even 5% of students that are failing one class or more. Remotely, for Henry Wilson School, based upon the testing, we have, based upon the statistics, we have about 30%. And you're saying half of those may be.
No, I said that was the half was for the high school.
Okay, high
not for
school. And then in high school, we still have pretty high percentage in person. We have 168 students in person and.
75 remote.
Right, but out of the 168, we have 45-ish, 44 that are failing one class or more. That is 25%. And remotely, we have almost 50%. So, I mean, I know the testing was just completed.
And that is for middle school. We do not have the SAT results yet.
Right, but this
So
testing.
from that, we know that remote is inferior to in-person. We know that for a fact anyway, given multiple studies. Even one of our own principals came to one of our meetings and said that the best education provided is in person, and that remote is not cutting it.
I don't think you can say across the board that it is inferior in all cases. We have a number of students, and I was specifically asked for the failure rates. We have a number of students who are doing very well remotely as well. And so,
And that's not surprising because we have, depending on the student, they can thrive based upon where it fits them. But overall, my concern is it's kind of twofold. One, what can we do better to address these students that are in need remotely to bring them up? If we were to stay, right? So say if this board listens to what we're being asked and say, let's entertain this, how are we going to say, oh, that's a great idea, and then we've got all these kids that don't fail? So to do that, how are we going to fix this to be able to bring these kids so they're successful and stay remote? Because right now, we're in high school, we have twice the amount of kids that need improvement with additional help, and in Henry Wilson, that is like a 6-to-1 ratio. So at Henry Wilson, in person, we're being very successful, and remotely, we have 30% of those children have failing 1 grade or more. So for us to consider staying remote, how are we going to address that so that we accomplish our number 1 goal, which is the children's education?
absolutely.
Can I say something?
Go ahead, Stan.
Yeah. There's false assumptions here. You cannot say because somebody went remote and they failed, that they failed because they went remote. Because you do not know what they would have done had they been face-to-face as well. It just so happens to be that more people are remote and are failing, but you cannot equate the two. We're not testing for that. You're testing for something else, and you're looking at the bunch of people, and you're just assuming because they're remote, that's why they failed. That's totally a false assumption, and we have no data to support that. So I'd be careful at what we say and drawing those conclusions when we're not testing for whether or not remote learning causes failure. We don't have any data to support that.
Well, regardless of whether, I wouldn't take the exact opinion you have regarding that we should ignore this data, but the data shows us that we have an increased concern regarding children that are remote. For whatever reason, these students are not obtaining the level of education that it's our job to assist them in acquiring. And
just according to the number of failures last year when everybody was face-to-face, and we have the same percentages of people failing, you have to compare the right stuff, and you have to collect data on the right things if you want to make a conclusion. So you can't draw these conclusions just because it happened that way.
No, I'll agree.
It could be a coincidence or it could not be. I'm just...
Right.
As a scientist, I'm just telling you that drawing that conclusion is dangerous.
Well, I agree with you. We certainly should be comparing this about our historical averages in these grades, because I agree with you, that's important, because it will also reflect, our past success rate.
I will tell you that as I looked at this, a number of our students who struggled last year are still struggling. And
The ones that were remote or the ones that are in person?
well, last year,
Or both?
I compared last year's first quarter to this year's first quarter, looking at the beginning of the year. Certainly can go back and pull additional data across time. I can't give you names, but I can give you groups and grade levels as long as I don't have identifiable data there. I looked at it anecdotally as I was going through because, yes, I'm concerned about the numbers here. Students who are remote are often more reluctant to reach out for additional help. It doesn't mean that teachers aren't offering it. It doesn't mean that the contacts aren't being made. It means that there are some conditions that are keeping them from being successful. The digital divide may be one of them, but I don't believe it's the only one, because a number of the students we have who may not be doing well here weren't doing well in person. And so I think some of this is coincidental as opposed to consequential. Does it need to be fixed anyway? Absolutely. And I'm not backing down from that part. But I think we may be categorizing something here perhaps too broadly.
Charlie?
Go ahead, Tim.
The direction this board gave when we came up with remote by choice was that parents would make the decision, and when a child's struggling, we pull them back into the school. These numbers are telling us that there's a significant number of remote students that are struggling. So we got to make a decision on how we're going to fix that. Maybe they'll come into the district and maybe they'll fail. But the plan was, and the direction from this board was, let them go remote, and once we see a problem, they're coming in.
Yeah, so, I mean, is it possible, Ruth Ellen, that you could get us maybe some prior year statistics that we could compare against this for the next meeting? Like, if you were to take the first quarter of last year, could we pull the same statistics and say, okay,
You have first quarter here, quarter one 2019, and you have quarter one 2020, last
Okay.
year's to this year's.
but
Last year, we didn't have remote as an option first quarter.
so if we look at those numbers, sorry, I didn't really realize those were here, because then last year total, in Henry Wilson, we had 10 total
First quarter.
students are failing one grade or more out of 220, which would be 5%.
Roughly, the numbers were
5%. And then first quarter of last year in the high school, we had 33, which would be 168.
Well, actually, it would be of the two combined, because we didn't have remote last year, first quarter, so you would have had a total population there.
Okay, so it'd be 168 and 75. In high school?
Roughly. The numbers weren't exact, but it's rough.
So it's 243, and you got, so it's 13%. So at the high school level, we had 13% of students that were failing one grade or more. And in Henry Wilson, we had 5%, actually less than 5%, probably 3 to 4%. And looking at that, remotely, we are 3 times that, or more than 3 times that. And we seem to be having some issues in person also.
I'm not dismissing the numbers. We need to reach these kids, but there are also some other factors here that, frankly, we're in the middle of a pandemic.
Yeah, I realize
And this
that.
certainly is going to affect
I don't want
some
people to
students'
take
ability to do that.
my concern for that I don't feel that they're working hard. I'm just looking at the numbers saying, as a school board member here,
We need to do something
that
more.
it's the opposite of what we'd like to see, and we
Certainly.
need to see, so what can we do to improve upon this problem where kids are succeeding at a higher rate, even comparable to last year? Because right now, we're substantially off course. And that may be due to staffing, the stress level, the pandemic, trying to operate remote and in person at the same time. I mean, I
There
had
are
the
a number of
ability.
factors here,
Yeah,
yes.
I had the
And-
ability to be in the 3 schools this week during educational week, and I was very impressed, actually. I learned quite a lot by seeing people in action, and I thought spirits were high for what I saw going on, and that people were participating and contributing at a high level overall. That being said, I mean, it gets back to the concern of how can we do better for the students who we need to, and that's the whole reason we're here.
Absolutely, there's no question there.
So I know this wasn't on our agenda, but there was some information that came to us. And unfortunately, even I have to apologize for the agenda, there was a bunch of things that needed to be on here that weren't. Some old business, one being the legal RFP, two being the sports, three being a proposal for facilities regarding upgrade by Siemens. I know that was some information that we asked for. Was there anything else that I'm missing, Ruth Ellen?
I believe those were the three that we had bounced around. I have one more that I will bring to next Monday.
Okay, so if the board doesn't have an issue, I'd like to tackle those before we go to budget. First, on the legal RFP, Brian, if you want to let us know where we're at and what you need from us.
Yep, I put it in the folder, basically the letter of engagement from DPC. They are available to start on November 30th, as you requested. They will actually, they'll do the 1-year commitment, and they'll actually extend their rates through year 2, if you prefer to do that.
Okay.
At that point.
If we chose to continue with the
At that point,
services.
right. The only thing they have, they are available too for a deliberative session, which is important, obviously, for January 30th, which they agreed to, and the only thing they ask is for a signed letter of engagement, which is what I put in the folder. I'll make a motion to authorize the chairman to sign the letter of engagement on behalf of the board.
I think it's with Brian's signature.
It's actually, they're looking for me to be duly authorized to sign the
And
letter of
who?
engagement by the board.
But who else are they looking for? Just yourself?
Just me.
Yeah.
Can you bind the district? It's by order of over.
I would basically, I'll make a friendly amendment to add Brian. So it'd be the chairman on behalf of the board and Brian.
If the board authorizes
Right.
either Brian or myself to sign, that's legally permissible.
Right.
Okay.
But it needs a board vote.
Right.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll amend my motion to authorize Brian to
Okay. So I'll second the
execute the
discussion.
contract on behalf of the board.
Any discussion? Not hearing any, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next, sports. Yeah, like I said, this should have been on the agenda, but
So with that, Larry and Eric and I met on what we felt was doable to be able to potentially still have a winter sports season and be able to staff that. Larry, do you want to join Eric? Are you present?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. I'll
so
just kind of,
what were the, I guess, changes to what you originally posed, Eric?
So we just talked about looking at the limitations on looking at time and looking at what exactly needs to be cleaned. So we looked at considering at the high school level, with practices, typically they may run a little later, with the staffing and the hours, ending at 10. We looked at the high school, just making sure we're ending practice at 8 o'clock and games at 8 o'clock. That meaning I schedule some, when we do have home games, to make sure that if there's 2 games going, that it allows that enough time to end around the 8 o'clock mark, so it gives enough time to allow for that cleaning meeting to happen. We did discuss the same thing at the middle school level, where we looked at the 7 o'clock time.
Anything to add, Larry?
No, we had a good discussion.
Are we going to be able to do that cleaning with our current staff or our part-timers or our contract? How are we planning to accomplish that?
yes.
Yes to all of the above. With our current staff, probably, we do have the part-time person that's starting tomorrow. So that'll put us at full staff here at night.
Okay.
And this is all, really contingent, anything could happen any day, any point. If there's also we lose a bunch of staffing and we're not able to do what we're said we could do, then we have to put things on hold. That's what we'll do, and that's kind of what we talked talked about today is anything at any moment is really contingent on the circumstances that we have. So it could change day by day, week by week, so, and we're prepared for that, understand that.
Tim?
Larry, with the amount of activity going on in the gym, does it make sense to try to find somebody from a 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. shift that does nothing but cleans our gym, if that's going to be used every night of the week? I'm just putting that out there for a concept. I don't need an answer tonight, but that may be a
Something to
solution.
think about.
Somebody may have a job that starts at 9 o'clock looking for part-time Christmas money that doesn't mind being trained and cleaning that gym from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. And that frees up the staff that we're, killing
Probably have to be 7:30.
with the
but,
cleaning.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's my only thing there now. And I've got two comments on the actual proposal, the actual policy that Eric. Eric, my first question on the policy is, under the cheerleading, it says no stunting. Does that make sense to leave that to the direction of the coach? And the reason I'm asking is our basketball is playing almost a full contact sport on the court. Our cheerleaders are coming in, they're washing their hands, they're doing their face masks. I don't know what is the benefit to not doing stunting compared to what we're allowing going on in the basketball court.
So that ultimately it's just minimizing the amount of contact. That's truly the point of not allowing stunting. Understanding, what you do need to do, what they want to provide at a game, and their routines can be done at a certain level without the stunting. So that's kind of the reason why I came with that proposal.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Joel.
Just to follow up on Mr. Brown's question, Mr. Larkham, is the NHIA preventing stunting, or are they allowing it at the discretion of schools? They're allowing it at the discretion of schools. There's been, like anything else, it's been all over the place on what schools are allowing. Seeming we're not we don't take our team to competition, which is in need along that stunting. I felt it wasn't a necessary part to have a successful season this year, but again, it's up for discussion.
Well, my discussion is, I understand Tim's thoughts, but I'm okay with not allowing it just to minimize some of the exposure if it's not absolutely necessary. But that's just my opinion. Anyone else on the, you had another point on the?
I do on the policy.
Right, the policy.
Volleyball season, I commend the students for being diligent and going by the rules and wearing their masks. In our policy, I want to see provisions for our staff.
That's why we added a coach's sign-off that they will.
And that failure to do so is subject to termination. It's a health policy, it's a safety policy. It's disparaging me as a board member to watch a game, see our kids diligently follow the rules, and there's some of our officials and staff without masks. Unacceptable to me.
Page 13 addresses that.
Okay.
Anyone else with discussion regarding the proposed policy?
I have one more comment.
Go ahead, Joel.
In regards to the stunting, I think, Charlie, you're going to find, having been at a lot of these games, the stunting that our girls do, and Mr. Brown certainly knows, his daughter's a cheerleader, is, I would call that contact much less contact than what you see in a regular basketball game, soccer game, which we just went through. The NHIA is allowing it. I think we should allow it to the discretion of our coach.
Is that a motion?
It's a motion to accept the proposal with stunting allowed for the Spirit Squad.
Is there a second? I'll second for discussion. Any discussion?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
On page 5, under face coverings, there are 2 different options there. One says student athletes participating in spirit will be required to wear masks, and student athletes playing basketball, masks unless they are physically participating in a game or practice. And then alternately, all student athletes are required to wear masks at all times, whether on the bench, the sidelines, the court, both in practice and for games. Which one of those alternatives is the board parking on? Because you don't want to vote with both of those in place.
You mean
You have an alternate.
the second one? Because
You
that's one
have
that seemed confusing.
one says cheerleaders or spirit wear masks at all times, but basketball players do not wear masks on the court. They wear masks off the court. The other says all athletes, whether spirit or basketball, wear masks at all times. I wanted to be sure
that's-
which
that's-
one you were looking at before you voted. for
Because both
something
of those
with
are in the
both.
policy.
Right, you need to pick one.
Joel, it's your motion. What's your thoughts on the mask requirement and
That's on page 5, it's highlighted under face coverings.
Well, what's the recommendation? I mean, we're just throwing out a hodgepodge of
Basketball players to wear masks, to require spirit to wear masks. There's almost as much yelling that goes on the court in each other's faces as goes on the sidelines. So I think it doesn't make sense to have a rule for one and a different rule for the other. So my recommendation is it's all or it's sidelines only.
I'll make.
Tim?
You know, we went through volleyball. Our players, while they were engaged in playing, weren't wearing masks. I played basketball in high school many, many years ago, and pretty difficult to run down the court with a mask on. I don't see that happening. I think we leave the mask during the activity at the discretion of the parents and the kids. If they want to wear a mask, they're welcome to. If they find it difficult during their athletics, they don't have to wear one.
other discussion? On the motion, which was, only had one change to the policy, but now based upon a discussion, I don't think we need to have some clarification by this board on what we're going to require for masks. Your thoughts, Joel?
Well, my thoughts are to support the recommendation of the athletic director and the superintendent.
Well, like Ruth Ellen has stated, you know, the requirements of the cheerleading squad versus the basketball, I think they should be consistent myself. They're both pretty strenuous activities at times, so I think it's only be fair that they should be the same. I can see arguments for both sides, both opinions. I'd just like to hear from the rest of the board. Josh? Or Stan?
This is Stan. I think we should err on the side of safety and health and require masks and distance as much as possible.
Josh?
I'm all set.
May I?
Go ahead, Ruth.
I know that in other states, they played volleyball and soccer seasons with masks and did so successfully. Basketball is one of those sports that, frankly, they're all over each other. Personally, I would be more comfortable recommending masks, but I understand that this is a board decision. But you asked for my opinion.
No, I appreciate it. Joel, it's your motion.
Eric, do you want to chime in? Are you in agreement with that?
So, my proposal, you know, as stated in the plan, was based off of information I've gotten from the Sports Medicine Committee, where, you know, there's obviously the pros and cons of wearing masks while being physically active. With the intensity of the basketball, there always was caution. That's why there was no recommendation, mandation of the mask, so it does concern me. But then again, there's the other side of it, if it's the safest thing, and that's what we want to do as a board. But in my proposal, I had it as basketball players, while on the court, not needing to wear masks.
What is that the recommendation of the basketball committee at the state level?
The basketball committee did not make a recommendation. That came from the sports medicine committee, who again didn't, with the high levels of wearing a mask, they didn't want to make a firm recommendation on whether to wear a mask or not, because of the levels of cardiac issues that could prescribe from the ball playing. Did that committee recommend anything for Spirit? There was no direct recommendation for Spirit. I made my proposal based on just the high level of exercise being happening during the sport. Just seeing basketball as a higher interval sport, whereas cheerleading, yes, there is, but it's not at the capacity of what basketball is. And would you agree, Eric, that when the cheerleaders are spread out on the sideline doing sideline cheers during a game, that they're 6 feet apart, or have the ability to be? Yeah, there's always the ability to have that. Well, my motion, Mr. King, would be to allow stunting, and I would suggest no masks during performance or during the competitive part of the sport that's on the floor.
Okay, who seconded that motion? Was it me?
It was.
Well, I'll accept that. I'll reaffirm my second based upon the amended motion. Ruth Ellen, you had something?
The other thing that I wanted to just comment on, and I think Mr. Shagnon has taken care of it with his motion, is that if you have one requirement for one group and one requirement for another, you are very closely skirting a Title IX issue that I would strongly encourage you to steer away from.
Well, that's the intent of the motion.
Yep. But just putting it out there.
Title IX being what?
Title IX being equity between sports for one gender versus another, although you do have both genders playing either sport. If you're going to say these have to follow this and those follow that, you have an equity issue.
Okay, well, Joel has clarified his motion with basically defining what the mask requirements will be for the cheerleaders and the players, and the other one,
and allowing stunting for the Spirit Squad.
Allowing stunting. Any other discussion on that motion? Not hearing any. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
I'm going to abstain.
So, Josh, you were for it?
Yes.
So that would be 3 for it, 1 opposed, 1 abstention. Let me get my calculator out.
Keep your shoes on. We're good.
Moving along next to a proposal for some upgrades at Henry Wilson regarding some heating, the controls upgrades to our current system. And Larry is here to discuss it, I guess. I read the proposal by Siemens, at the cost being $25,900, I think, approximately. I guess if you could tell us, what is this going to give you, and what are we going to be getting for improvements as far as efficiency and quality with these improvements?
As far as efficiency, it'll eliminate 2 boilers running at the same time all the time. It will give a lag time on one so that when one's running, the other one won't kick in. They'll switch off every couple hours, probably what it is, which will increase the boiler life. It's as far as the controllers, that will stop the circulator pumps from running, which will stop the hot water from circulating throughout the school all the time, which sometimes causes the overheating problem in the rooms because the water, even if it's not calling for any, is still circulating.
But on that point, do you feel that's going to address 75% of those issues or 25%?
30%.
The overheating issue?
Probably 35%.
Okay. And the other times that's happening is because of what?
We're still working on looking at one of the problems is that when that system, whenever it was installed, there was never any insulation put on the return pipes inside the radiators in the rooms. We're working on insulating those, but we run into some problems because the piping is so close to the fin tubes on the radiators. So basically, when the water is circulating through, even though the fin tubes aren't calling for heat, you have the pipe still putting out radiating heat. So we're trying to get insulation on all of those pipes. The other thing with some of this, it will is upgrading the panels, which we've talked about are obsolete now. It'll give...
And those are just the panels at Henry Wilson?
Yes.
And those panel interfaces with our larger control system?
Right. It will add...
All three schools?
This will be just for Henry Wilson. Right now, we're integrated with all three schools, at the high school and at Valley View, especially Valley View, I should say. We can look individually on graphs and see the temperature in each room. We control the temperature in each room by digital if we need to. Control the damper, the percentage of the dampers, whether they're allowed to open fully or close. This will add more graphics to the Henry Wilson so that can actually see the boiler operation. We'd have the alarms on them so that if they fail, we'd get a warning through the Insight program that comes. It would come across my phone or something. We get a warning if, like, say, in the middle of the night, the boilers go out.
Right.
You get an alarm that they're not firing. So
But we don't have that capability.
we don't have that capability at Henry Wilson. We have that capability at these two schools.
Now, will these upgrades get this to be equal to what we have for controls and notifications as the other two schools?
Yes.
Okay, good. Anyone else have any questions?
Where are we paying for the setup? Where are we paying, how are we paying for it?
I don't think that's Larry's.
Well, I mean, he does his budget.
Right.
Where's the money coming from?
I believe we were looking to see if we could take some out of the excess roof fund that we didn't spend.
Yeah, myself, I would like to see it come out of some reserve account and not put it on general taxation, wherever that would be budgetarily. But I think it's something that we should do. It'll be more efficient. It'll prolong life for our hardware down there, and also provide better response if we were to have a problem. And it would kind of tide us over until we have a better plan for changing over our systems that we currently have.
Of the 2 warrant articles that had initially been tapped for the Henry Wilson roof, the one that's $95,000 we aren't going to end up probably touching. That could very well be where this would come out of. We are agents to expend.
So when are you looking for an answer on this project? Tonight? Because if we're going to authorize it tonight, we also need to take a vote to withdraw from the trust fund if that's how we're going to pay for it.
Well, you need to do a public hearing still to do that, but that could be in the future.
Right. I think for me, it's just a matter of saying if we feel that we should do it, we'll put it into the rest of our kind of budget plan going forward. And because we don't have a deadline on this.
No, and I wouldn't see them doing this until the heating season is over.
So what month are we talking? June?
Depends upon the year.
Yeah.
I mean, realistically, when school's
April to
closed?
June, yeah.
Okay.
So I think if we just plan for it, if the board approves it, then we can put it into our budget discussions and where we're going to take it out of. But I just certainly wanted to have the discussion with Larry to see what we were going to have for improvements. And because I had a relatively good understanding on it, but I wanted to hear it again.
And I would say this would be included in the update of the CIP plan as we're moving forward. So you have a sample of the CIP plan in the budget documents. This would become part of that would be outlined later.
Yeah, so I'm in favor of having it in our proposed budget and to come out of capital reserve. I
As a
don't
warrant
know.
article?
However the board wants to do it. We can
It
take
should be
it.
a warrant article, or you are agents to expend, so you
That's-
could do the
Right.
public hearing this year.
That's what I'm saying. We could spend the money this year and not have it be inclusive of our next year budget that we're building.
Yeah, no, I think that would be preferable for myself because I think we could just get it done. We could get it in a schedule.
Right.
Like I said, we had a substantial saving on a roof. This is a necessary improvement. And I think it makes sense to do.
So I guess what my vision would be to identify the trust fund that we want to spend out of, post a public hearing, authorize the expenditure of the money, and then as we're going into the budget, maybe a warrant article to replace some of that money out of fund balance that we spent on the heating system so that we're not drawing these accounts down to zero.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That way, and it'll put it up to the taxpayer to see if they wanted to fund the monies going back into that capital reserve account.
Do you want to try to do a public hearing between now and the holiday break for the winter, or do you want to push that into January?
I think do we have to book kind of like an install now? Are they that backed up, or?
I would talk to them. I wanted to go before the board before I went too deep with them and find out how.
We can do a consensus of the board to see that they want to do it, so we can communicate with the contractor, but I'd say get them the approval so that he can get it into
their schedule.
So we're not, by the way, we can't do it next summer, we're booked.
Right.
Well, I'll make a motion to move this forward to public hearing.
I'll second that.
I need to publish it 7 to 10 days prior and to get in on deadlines.
That's why I'm not
for
going to
the-
have a date on my motion, so we can work it into when it makes sense.
Okay, that was my next question. Okay.
Authorize the superintendent to post a.
Yeah, authorize to post a
Okay.
public hearing for this expenditure, and at that time designate the funds you feel that it should come from. And at that public hearing, we could change it if the board wishes, or based upon public comment that.
No, you
we
can't. You'd
have
have
to
to do another
notice.
public hearing. So you want to determine where you want to
Right.
take it from, or we're posting again.
But based upon the discussion, there's been only one fund that we talked about.
That would be my recommendation. Certainly, if you feel differently, then there are other funds that you got a trust funds printout last meeting, so.
All right. Tim?
I'm good with the account that's got the 95,000 in it.
Anyone else from the board? Not hearing any. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
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 Motion passes.
Was that
So she'll
Stanton?
schedule that, and then at that point, we'll have the public hearing, and then potentially we'll approve the expenditure.
Okay, thank you.
Moving right along to budget.
Mr. Chairman, can I motion for a 5-minute recess?
We have a motion for a 5-minute recess. Is there a second? I'll second for discussion. Any discussion? Not hearing any. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
was Angie Cardinal's Cheesecake.
Yeah. Make sure to tell everybody. I sent her an email myself on top of everybody else thanking her. So I'd like to welcome everyone back. We got a 5-minute recess and back to, before we go to budget, something else on our agenda was listed as bid policy waiver regarding water testing. I guess there was an RFP from our air quality testing. Well, actually, it wasn't RFP.
No, it's, the company is RFP Environmental.
RFP Environmental, but we didn't solicit
RPF,
this.
sorry.
Right.
We're dyslexic tonight.
But we didn't solicit this. This was a recommendation by them. Go ahead, Larry. How did this come to us?
No, I did solicit it from,
Okay.
because during the teacher negotiations and part of the MOA, it was listed that they, somebody had brought up that they wanted to have testing, wanted to know if we had testing for Legionella in the water fountains.
Yep.
So I contacted RPF, which has done our indoor air quality, and they did some of our lead testing for us too, for the water, and solicited a thing to have all the water fountains tested in all 3 schools.
And is something done routinely in schools or something?
No, this is something that's been brought up within the last year or so, I believe, that the state recommends that there's, to make sure that there's no bacteria forming in the water fountain, in the water supply.
Right.
What did we just do recently with our water supply?
Lead testing.
It was just lead testing?
Lead testing, and that was a state requirement.
So.
This isn't a state requirement that I'm
So we're
aware of.
not required to do this. I tried to do a little research on it, and typically this is somebody gets pneumonia, which is the first phase from this type of bacteria.
Yeah, it's related to the Legionnaire's disease.
The Legionnaire's disease is the severe form of this pneumonia.
Right.
That if you get this bacteria in your lungs, typically it's the cases that I found in the last 2 years in the state were all surrounded by heated spas or pools where you basically have to get this bacteria in your lungs, not drinking it, but actually get it into your lungs. There was no requirement. I did reach out to Arthur Capello, the town administrator, and asked him, was the town testing for this in the water supply, which is the same water supply where we got our water? And the answer is no.
And actually, even when the town did the lead testing for the water supply, their testing stops at our junction into the school. That's why we had to get separate testing done, because the state says that what goes into the school, what goes into your pipes in the school or into your home are your responsibility.
Yeah, so we had to do the lead also.
Yes.
So the town isn't currently testing this, and it's not a requirement of the town, but I did tell Arthur that I would get that forwarded to him because he may want to add that to the testing for the town. Because reading it, large storage tanks are an area of concern where there's water setting for a long period of time, and we do have 2 tanks for pressure. We have, one off of the Pound Road, and then one up
above the high school.
Up behind high school, yeah. So, hopefully maybe the town will consider it. For me, I don't think it's really necessary at this point if we don't have a requirement. Because we were shut down, if we were going to test, it would have been more timely test to test right before school opened or when we opened back up. So for me, I don't think it's something that we need to do right now. And if so, if we can have the town in subsequent years test this at their main sources of storage containment, they may only have to test 2 or 3 major storage tanks to address the majority of the concern. But it's just my thoughts. A discussion from the board. Tim?
How did I hear you right in that this came from the union, a request?
It was listed under one of the right-to-know requests, I believe.
We received a number of right-to-know requests around what type of testing we had done. And this was one of the tests that was requested. As we hadn't done it, we couldn't release it.
Now, my other thought that I just had, would it make sense, because they were testing every water fountain we have, right? 22 samples. I mean, would it make sense to scale it back to test, because those are the output. I mean, if we were to have this bacteria, typically it would not be at the output, it would be in our storage tanks or any storage vessels we have in each school.
But there is water that does pool in those fountains, which is part of the reason why they're testing the fountains, because that's where it comes out. There's a tank, water comes in, it comes out, but it doesn't all come out. It's not completely drained out in between uses.
Right, but
That was the thought between.
Yeah, but it's not like it's stored there for a long time without being continually pushed out.
Well, and the concern was more, over spring and summer when the building was out of use, or not in the same use.
What are the town capabilities? I know the town has testing capabilities on site. Is this something they can test for? Is this something that they send out to the state?
I think they would have to send out this. I saw some test costs as low as $80. That's probably, you would have to take the water and send it off. This contractor bid 22 different tests, and any test additional to that would be $160 for each one. But that's kind of the handling and so forth. So.
And testing for more than one type of bacteria.
Right, the bacteria is listed, which I'm sure the test would test up for all that. So I would either be, I'm not in favor of doing it to this level, so I'd either wait for a subsequent year or tone it down to a few tests per building. But that's just my thought, thinking about it, because we could basically test the output in every building, make sure that if we had any in any storage tanks or in the line, that we would be testing for it, instead of saying, let's test every faucet in the building, because chances are, if we were to have it, it would be in our incoming supply or in our storage here, which would then get distributed to every fountain. From what I read, it would be unlikely to be in this fountain and not that fountain. If we've got it, I think it would be everywhere. But discussion from the other members of the board? Are you in favor of doing this? Not in favor, having it readdressed to a smaller scale? Speak now. Not hearing anything, I'll make a motion to not have the testing done at this point.
You need to make a positive motion.
I'll make a motion to table.
That works too.
I'll second. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I don't think that's a requirement of us, to be honest. The motion has to be an affirmative. It's only if we adopted Robert rules or some other policy procedure for end meeting. But that's the sidebar. All right. Moving on to budget.
Okay.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
Sure you don't want to stay for budget, Larry?
I'd love to.
As it keeps walking, yes.
You forgot your popcorn, Larry.
Yeah, well, I didn't know that was mine until you said that.
Where would you like to start, Ruth Ellen? I mean, we have a bunch of sections. I don't know if you had a flow in mind.
This is by and large what you have already seen, but it is broken down. And this is what we have used in past years. It's what the Budget Committee asked for in the same breakdown as they have been accustomed to see it. You have some summary information that some of you have seen, the staffing report. There are some other pieces in there. I've given you last year's CIP. Typically, that is updated. And as you determine the warrants that you're looking to do, that is in large part what tends to fill this in as we're looking at pieces moving forward. We have the roofs for this year for Henry Wilson that were listed. Those are being done. There are roofs that were that are here scheduled out, whether we want to look at those moving forward. That's kind of the general sequence of the roofs that was suggested for the other pieces that we need to complete. And those figures come from what we had from previous bids. So obviously those figures will need to change. We did have in school year 2022, looking at bus replacement for next year purchasing one 15-passenger van and one bus. That had been scheduled. We have not put as much mileage on the buses over the past year. We had that. A 15-passenger bus would give us some flexibility because we do not require the CDL license for that. That's the largest we can go without it. They would still need the school bus endorsement, but they do not need to have a CDL license to drive the 15-passenger. Larger than that, they do. Right
So in
now,
this proposal, you're looking for a purchase?
yes, and we have that in the bus capital reserve currently. We've been building that up to look to be able to do this purchase in this coming year.
So I guess where does the board want to start regarding this?
I'd like to start at Valley View and go from school to school and department to department. Probably the easiest way.
Yeah, I mean,
And this is a breakdown of
Right.
exactly what you have already seen.
right.
So
So if-
what
if
it
we-
does is it shows it to you, again, in a different segment.
So if we start at the way it's put in the folder, that would be at Valley View, Valley View School. If you start there, I'll open it up to Tim, because he's our budget rep.
So Valley View is showing a $279,734.08 decrease over what this school year is. Are there any sacrifices in that money that's going to impact education?
This does not include the
Position.
position
Right.
here. So that's a good portion of that decrease.
What I'd like to do is, if Blake's available in non-public, I'd like to have a personnel conversation with him on that position,
Okay?
Yeah,
if that's
I
okay
agree.
with you.
That's
So,
fine with me.
so for right now, I'm going to make a motion that we approve the Valley View Community School year 2020 proposed budget in the amount of $2,982,231.28. And then we can amend that as we add, approve, or deny the position.
Okay.
Second.
Go ahead, Ruth Ellen.
Typically, the budget is done in aggregate
Right.
rather than the separate sections. Because in doing this, you are going to have some overlap. So
Overlap
this-
meaning,
this section includes the salaries of the positions here. When you get to salaries and benefits, all of those are replicated. You have special ed costs that
Right.
are included, the Valley View special ed costs when you get to the
so
special ed
maybe,
section.
maybe the motion should be to move it forward as proposed to,
With the included line items
well,
rather
to
than
move
a
it forward
cost item?
as proposed for later discussion for later presentation to the budget committee. Saying, basically, your motion is saying you're ready to move this forward. But it's,
Pending the
like you said,
discussion.
there might be some overlap of different sections when
Right.
it goes to the budget committee.
There is, so if you were to take the bottom line of each of these sections and add it up, it will be more than
Be
the,
about $35 million.
yes, because of the overlap. Yep.
So I guess it's your motion, Tim. I think you're just trying to move it forward
Well,
in a
I mean,
discussion.
we can do the same thing in a Fund 10 by looking at department in a Fund 10. So I think that was in last week's budget.
It's in this one as well, I believe.
I didn't see it unless it went in after.
Let me check. Actually, it might not be because I just gave you the sections.
Yeah.
Do you want me to pull it over?
Can you just slide one over so that
Sure.
I can go back and forth from the same page?
I can do that.
Being the computer illiterate person I am.
Now you're gonna claim that, huh? I will get that. Of course, your computer's up and mine's waking up, but it'll be there in a moment.
Is this the draft one that we've been working off of?
Yes,
Yeah.
V2 draft.
All right, I got that here.
Yeah.
I mean, while we're waiting, I mean, timeline-wise, we've got 2 minutes, two meetings in between the public hearing, but realistically, one of those is the 7th, which is 2 days before the Budget Committee public presentation. So I personally like to be done this budget on the 30th to give the superintendent enough time to...
Well, it needs to go to the budget committee the 1st,
Okay.
so.
Well, then maybe we'd like to get it done tonight.
Well, without having another meeting scheduled, we would have to get it done tonight or schedule another meeting, right?
Correct. I mean, tentatively, you had earmarked the 30th as a maybe.
Let's keep it that way.
Maybe is good. Okay. We'll take it.
So Tim's discussion is basically to move this forward as far as that school. But
Let me look at Fund 10 and we'll go down.
So maybe we'll table that a little bit. I'll table that motion for a second, and then we'll go, if we go to the next thing on our budget list, which is transportation that Ruth Ellen spoke about. If we open that up, see if I printed out copy.
And that is not in that budget because we have money set aside in that CRF for those
Okay.
purchases. So that would be either a warrant article or a public hearing because you are agents to expend.
Right. So in this budget for transportation, we have a proposed increase of $50,000, $50,400. Where are the majority of those increases?
Hold on a minute, let me pull this out and then I will give you that. No, don't try again, Laura, just give it to me now.
Because the other buses that you're referring to is coming out of capital reserve. So those are not in here.
Correct.
Salaries, benefits, and retirement are the biggest ones.
Is that all of it, or is the majority of it?
Majority of it.
It is the large majority of it.
And how much percentage of that 50,000 is that number, approximately?
Well, if you look at the section under student transportation services 2,700, that is largely salaries and benefits, that's an increase of 118, but then you have other decreases that offset.
So if our salary and benefits is increasing by $100,000,
Actually, no, it's not increasing by that much, it is that much, sorry.
okay.
Hold on.
Well, actually,
We need to look at that. That seems to be a fairly hefty
because
increase.
it says for the prior year adopted and proposed, the difference between the prior year adopted, year 22, it's $118,000 difference.
Hold on. I'm pulling that-
111.
my sheet up here.
Yep.
So salaries of bus drivers, the biggest line that changes by $111,000 on the first line. So what is the accounting difference? Because the year before that, it was 122, then we went to 62, and then we went to 173. Now
See, I'm showing include all the salary. You can include, let me do this. It'd be easier.
So if you go to the 2,700 line.
I'm doing it right from my spreadsheet here.
Okay.
Just salary alone from 2021 It's expected to be a 162,888. And total for 21-22 is 173,646.
But the number I see in this chart is 62,551.
I think we're missing a number. We're missing a
That was
digit.
adopted, I mean, but if you see what final expended was?
What is the final
Was 122.
Final expended was 122.
Well, about 123, really.
So I think it was there because it has largely been taken out of the other areas where it had been budgeted in all the other segments and spread out. We've now
What was
taken those,
budgeted?
the salaries. So there was a large salaries under,
Well, if you look down to special ed, transportation, there's nothing really budgeted down there. I think it's all at the top.
right,
I mean, that's 50.
What line item is
60,
that?
go down
So,
about
under transportation.
27, 22,
yeah.
lines 26 to 31. I mean, you're looking at $75,000 right there.
That's moved up to the lines
Right.
higher.
Yes.
So this area here is a $60,000 decrease.
76.
Actually, $76,000.
$76,000
Okay,
decrease.
76,000, but here it's 118, so you have increases in health insurance line of $9,000 approximately. Retirement for bus drivers, that's gone up $6,500. FICA has doubled. Oh, yeah, 'cause that's also,
Well, no, it really
FICA's
gets-
gone up.
it was 9,200 to 17,100. I mean, I don't want to exaggerate by $1,000, but you're right.
Okay.
It went up 8 on top of 9. So it didn't double. It was 90% increase.
And I think that was under budgeted last year, because if you look at FICA expended,
Well, some of that has moved up from that other line.
Correct.
As Brian said.
correct.
So some of that is just because that stuff's moved up.
Tim, it's almost downloaded, and then if you refresh, you'll see it. It's got about this much more to go on the circle.
So the retirement for the bus drivers, so that was also, section of that moved up from
Correct.
27, 22.
Yes.
This 3,600 that got moved up. Is that the only area for retirement that it got moved up? So that increase is,
Tim, if you hit refresh, you'll see it now.
so that's 3,000 or 3,500. So that would be, say, 17,000. It's gone up to 21. What's the requirement change of that percentage on the retirement? It went up from,
Went up to 21.02 from 17.8, was it? Yeah.
It's a little over 5%, actually.
Well, if you take it as a percentage of the original number, it's actually
Right, it's actually
relatively
more than
large.
that, yes.
It's
Yeah,
close to 20%.
right.
so what are we
5
doing
points.
differently this year versus last year, as far as staffing?
Staffing, we are down a driver that we've not been able to hire. We need the driver, but we haven't been able to hire. We have consolidated our runs, and in the last 2 years have added full-time drivers who are available to us at least 7 hours a day, as opposed to paying minimum runs every time the bus went out. So it used to be a run would be 2 hours regardless if it was 15 minutes or 2 hours. Now that we have those 3 drivers who are, or 2 drivers who are full-time, they are in district and available to drive throughout the day, those other runs, they're paid those 7 hours. If they work beyond that, they're paid the additional. But we're not paying the small runs throughout the day at the larger rate.
So if we have bus drivers that are here for 7 hours, considered full-time,
They're 35 hours a
Okay.
week. They do qualify for benefits.
what are we doing during the day when they're not driving? What are these employees doing?
They are doing, instead of getting paid for doing separate runs to take buses to DePrisio's, they're doing that. They're doing the extra cleaning on the buses that's required now between runs. They're doing the additional
Remote meals.
pre-K runs. They're doing
Remote meals.
anything for delivering meals and materials if we have anything going out for remote students. They're doing those as part of that time as opposed to an additional cost. They take, if we have Voc runs, those aren't being charged separately now. That's part of what those drivers are doing during the day, back and forth up to Lakes Region.
Anyone with any discussion or questions from the board? Getting down to the bottom line here, it's a $60,000 increase, but in some areas, it's a substantial increase in pay and benefits because prior years, we had a lease in this budget, which came off last year.
It came out, it's not in the 47 passenger lease was not in this year's budget. It was
Right.
in the 1920 budget.
But it was in that budget, and at that point, the transportation was still lower than this budget. So in the 2019 and 20 budget, it was 433, and it had a $47,000 lease, and now that lease is done, and we're 80,000, so...
It was a $19,000 lease. It was a 47 passenger lease,
Okay,
but it was a...
Okay, so it's $19,000
$20,000.
lease, but if you were to subtract that out, this budget is a full $100,000 more than it was 2 years ago. I'm just stating that as what I see. I'm saying I think we need to do something different, but it is, over the past 2 years, it's been a steady increase of at least 10% a year in this area. And some of the other purchases that you're talking about are gonna come on top of this in warrant articles.
Correct. But they were specifically, monies have been specifically set aside for those planned purchases.
Tim?
I think on the transportation, I see the struggle. The one thing that I can say about the transportation's budgets is if they haven't needed the money, it's been returned to the taxpayers. I'm comfortable here in this section as far as approving it as proposed.
Any other discussion from the other members regarding the transportation section? Not hearing any, I'll second to move this forward to, I guess, later consideration to give to the Budget Committee.
Okay.
As submitted. So, any discussion on that? Not hearing any, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Just moving it forward, but we can pick up later, but basically saying we're all set with it for now, as
So
proposed.
if you are looking for the Fund 10 total budget, I have added that back to the budget segments. It's right under VVCS if you have them ordered so that VVCS is on the top.
So if we go back to Valley View School, I guess, Tim, your thoughts or because we kind of tabled that discussion.
Well, let me just Let me pull up Fund 10.
And on that, the first 2 pages are the summary, and then the following pages are the detail.
I mean, honestly, I'm okay with Valley View's budget, with the exception of a non-public conversation on personnel.
So I'll second as far as moving it forward for consideration to give to the Budget Committee. Any discussion on that? Not hearing any, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Moving on through the folder, thank you. Next, we have technology for school year 2022. So this is currently proposed at $393,000. Last year was $329,000. The year before that, it was expended at $465,000. So where were the increases from this year versus last year, Raquel, in summary? 60,000.
A large part of the increases are in the software that we are using now to manage our additional capabilities remotely. Some of those pieces are being purchased through grant funding for this year, but in order to continue that moving forward, they would need to be pulled into GoGuardian, Screencastify, Cami. Those are specifically pieces that we are using now that we are in a remote setting. As we look also to replace computers, general ed laptops for high school teachers, looking at, and then 30 replacement Chromebooks for those that may be damaged or not usable. I anticipate.
So the new equipment you're referring to, there's a line item for $111,000?
There's a line in here.
Oh, no, sorry,
Nope,
that's
it's line 102820 57,370. It's line 27 under technology. It's
Okay,
for
37. Okay,
Yep,
good.
37 too. So that would include those laptops for general education teachers at the high school. They're next in the rotation to be replaced. And then replacement Chromebooks.
Now, that monies can't come out of some of the CARES Act funding to replace those?
It
If
could,
we have any left.
it could potentially, if we still had that left at the end of the year, it certainly could. At least the replacement Chromebooks for students, replacement computers for the teachers. Again,
It'd be tough to get it under that.
that would be tough to get it because that is
A remote asset?
it is a remote asset, but it is also something that has been in our budget, and we need to be careful not to hit the supplant versus supplement.
It's not in the budget yet. It's sitting in front of us now for approval. And I'm not saying that, you know, if it was in this year's budget to buy 32 computers, no, we couldn't do it. Just because it's in as a recommendation here.
Not saying that it has, that refreshment cycle has been part of our budget in the past. That's where that really fine line of supplement versus supplant. It doesn't mean that they won't allow it, but it tap dances on the line.
I'm going to make a motion to level fund, but add in the 2% raises that kind of have been dropped in across the board.
So the motion is seconded.
So level fund with 2% raises?
Yep,
On top
subtract the 63,976.88 increase, and then allow for a placeholder of 2% raises for staff. Until we decide where we're going to go.
So seconded by Josh, discussion. Well, I got a couple questions in that discussion. So item 17, remote Wi-Fi support, $18,000 that we haven't not incurred in the past. What is that for?
Which line was that, please?
17 on, as far as on the left-hand
Says
side.
hotspots.
Those are for the hotspots for students if they need to be remote and need connection.
So that would definitely be.
That is under the CARES Act currently, assuming that the CARES Act runs out in September of next year.
So if we were to level fund, that 18 should be in there because it's going to be coming from the CARES Act, or we could take that out and get it through the CARES Act?
I can only use the CARES Act through September of next year. I can't use that for ongoing monthly costs into the school year next year.
Well, we shouldn't have a need for it. If we're not remote, say because the epidemic is over, why would we need to carry that as a reoccurring cost from here on in? I'm lost.
Again, looking to see what the board wants to do with this. If we are able to use remote for snow days, some students would need connections. Again, this is a board decision.
Well, it basically would get added to this budget, and then it would carry this cost base forever probably. And if we don't need it, why would we be doing it? If we're currently going to get those services or that equipment temporarily through the CARES Act because we need it to be remote for the students that were here, that we're doing now, because if Tim's motion passes, then we're going to take $63,000 out of this budget. Where are we going to take it? I mean, there's $18,000 there. The software licensing, which is up, say $11,000, or say $10,500. Some of this we're currently using, and it may be, because that's what the increase is. What are we?
And now that
we're not going to do.
If we are, whether we're remote or not, we are now capable of a one-to-one environment, which means that we need to at least maintain our ability to oversee those devices that we have in use in classrooms.
Right. So that comes in with that additional licensing cost. So,
yes.
Like I said, getting back to Tim's motion, if we were to level fund this, and you were to say, okay, where are we going to make the cuts? Say the 18,000 comes out of it. Then the balance, you have 37,000 for replacement of computers. That may have to be a consideration because a lot of this, I know there was some proposal for additional staffing, but that's not in this section.
It is not.
So where would those cuts be made? I don't know, Tim, you had any thoughts?
The 30,000 in the computers, I'd be looking at CARES Act funding. I think that's paramount into running a remote education.
So if you provide that with the hotspots, that's 18 and 37, which is, doesn't necessarily.
55.
What's that?
55 in round terms.
So they're still missing another 7. Did this budget reflect any pay increases? That's not in here either.
The 2% is in here.
Okay.
Yes.
So that would be some factor of that. So that may be most of that number. Not saying that those have to be the areas that staff is going to recommend reductions in if the motion passes, but I just saw a couple things that.
Well, actually, right now, the increase in salaries is only 67 or 1,600. And
It's exactly 2%.
It's 2%. And then there is a decrease in the assistant line. And then the retirement increase is the large part. That's almost $6,000. So that would be your 7,000 that was left. Yes.
The other thing that you may, right now you have a $2,500 access point license. I assume that's for the hotspots?
No, that is.
Something else?
Which line is that?
It's under licensing. He does a bunch of notes. Wireless access point license and support.
Which line number, please?
It was top of
That's for the wireless access points above your head across the buildings.
Okay, thank you, Jen. So I don't know if any of this licensing would go with the hotspots that could potentially go into the CARES Act
The
funding.
licensing, the hotspot costs are in that line, that's the
Okay.
$18,000.
So there's no other costs that will be associated to that in the licensing?
For the hotspots?
Right,
I believe that line is,
so all-inclusive?
yes.
Okay.
Am I
So-
correct there, Jen?
Yes.
Thank you.
Discussion, any more discussion on the motion? Stan, Josh, or Joel?
No, all set.
Can you repeat the motion?
The level fund, but add in the 2% marks for the, 2% holder for the employee raises till we decide what we're gonna do with them.
Thank you.
Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of moving it forward later in the budget process?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm gonna say no.
Dan's a no, so we have Josh and
I heard Tim.
Joel said yes.
Did you?
Yes.
Okay,
That was Josh.
That was
Joel?
Joel said
Yes, yes.
okay, motion passes. I'm going to abstain at this point because I'm scratching my head a little bit about this section, but motion passes. We may have to look at that in the future, but moving on to the next section. Supplemental docs, no, that's
That's everything but, yes.
everything, but we need to talk about that or no?
Well,
What's in that?
one of the things that I'd like you to take a look at as we're moving forward toward the
Printed it.
representation of the budget, looking to see the, where did it go here? The graphs and charts, sometimes those are helpful in representing the budget, sometimes they are not. So looking for your feedback.
So at this point, I'm going to suggest we
Hold back on that?
we table that and try to get to the budget section
Sure.
that we got to get ready for the budget committee.
Got
And
it.
come back to it. Moving
Got it.
along, student services, including special ed, school year 2021, that's 2022. The bottom line on this proposed year is $4,136,000. Prior adopted was $4,008,000.
Yes.
Increases were $127,000, which is a 3.18% increase.
Increases for contracted services are running between 3% and 4% across the board. SLC is looking to hold as close to 3% as they can. That may shift depending upon where their staffing goes.
And
Go ahead.
and in this section, we have the 2% increase for staff.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Well, in this, there's mostly teachers and paras. They're
Right,
by the
and so
contract.
again, you have an overlap here of,
Right, but it's captured in this number.
yes, it
So
is.
Contractual
if the
increases.
board is comfortable with this number, then we've at
You
least...
have contractual increases for teachers here. Paras are level across because there's a new CBA that would be coming in. So paras do not have an increase that's built in right now because their contract
It'll be
runs
on a
out in
sep-
June.
And it'll be on a separate warrant article.
It will depend upon what
Okay,
happens with
so
that
that would
warrant
be on a
article.
separate warrant article?
Yes.
So we
Yep.
don't need to take that into account here?
Correct.
Tim?
I got a question. Do we have a psychologist on staff that
We do.
deals with staff issues?
Primarily
student?
primarily
Staff.
student. She She does speak with staff, but she is hired as a student psychologist. She is a licensed psychologist.
How long has that been a staff position versus a contract position?
That's a good question. It's been quite a while.
Yeah.
Apologies.
Jolene Landers is our school psychologist. She is on the Google Meet, so she could probably recall this better than I can. I want to say it's been a good 5 years, but I'd have to go back and actually look at my records.
She's worked for the district for several years, but part of that time was as a contracted service provider and now works for the district.
Well, when we had it as a contracted service, we made the change, it was before my time, maybe Joel can help me with this. What was the reason we did it? Because it was more economical to have a person on staff, or it was better as far as the services that we're getting because they were more consistent? Joel, do you remember the reason why that was brought forward from a contract to a full-time staff person?
We had a school psychologist on staff when I was principal 4 through 6, and that was 2004 to 2008. I think that the position is, in fact, I want to say at one point we had 2 psychologists on staff.
We did. Yep.
Jolene is on this call, and maybe at some point she can jump in, but I believe when I was a principal, we had 2 psychologists on staff. At one point, there was a move to bring in outside school psychologists to help with special ed testing, and that was much more expensive.
It
Yes,
is.
it was.
Okay, thank you for the insight. Anything else?
I think
Tim?
we've got Jolene.
Is that Jolene?
Added, there was a full-time and 2 part-time, and then it was brought back to 1 person.
Okay, so there had been a full-time and 2 part-time, and now we have the single 1 full-time.
So, my only comment on this budget here is I believe the district resource officer is in this proposal as well as the social worker.
Yeah, line 104.
Behavioral services.
Yeah,
The district resource officer is 2119.
yes,
And then we have a grant-funded position that's running out this year for a social worker.
correct. The social worker is not currently included because you had asked for that to be separate.
I'm going to make a motion that we take both out of this particular budget and put them before the taxpayers as warrant articles.
Good. Okay, the social worker's not in here now, but you want that as a warrant article.
So is there a second on Tim's motion?
Second.
Seconded by Josh. Discussion? I've had my discussion before. At this point, I think that one of them we've already discussed as far as going as a warrant article. The school resource officer I support, but I'm not opposed to putting it before the taxpayers because I'm pretty confident it's going to be funded. Other discussion from other members? Not hearing any, go ahead.
So
Rizzo.
looking at those as separate warrant articles, I
Yes.
just want to make sure, so each standing alone.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Any other
Thank you.
discussion on the motion? Not hearing any, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Stands opposed?
Okay, was that 1 no?
I think so.
I'll have to abstain. I stepped away from my computer.
Okay,
Okay.
motion passes. So that was to also move it forward, or no? That was just to take
Move it
it
forward as a warrant article. And yeah, I'm okay with the rest of the budget.
So that'll be moved forward. Next,
Or was that clear with the other?
Josh, are you clear with that as a motion? That is a motion to forward until later in the budget process when making those amendments?
Yes. I understood the motion to be to remove the district resource officer from the budget. Is that right?
Yeah,
It was
yeah, that's kind of a little
two
bit.
separate?
That's my opinion, Stan. So I'll make a motion to move that section as amended forward in the budget process. So basically, as submitted with that one change.
Okay.
Is there a second?
When you say one change, the social worker and the resource officer?
The social worker is not in here.
Okay.
So
The resource officer
resource
would be
is.
removed, but you're
that's
asking
why I'm
me
saying
to...
it's one change to the budget numbers, but the motion carries as far as the two
Positions,
warrant articles.
okay.
Is there a second on my motion?
Second.
Any discussion? Not hearing any. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No, aye.
One opposed. Stan. Moving next to school board proposed budget. I think I didn't print that one out.
Would you like a copy?
No, I've got a copy here. I just
Okay.
printed out some of it, but just gotta get my mouse to cooperate.
It's just one page, actually half
It's
a
one
page.
page, it's good. I have it printed if you need it.
So this is a increase of $16,000. What are we spending lavishly on, I guess?
Your raises.
There's an increase, and where are we finding we need an increase in? I know you put,
Majority of the legal line was bumped up. That could be dropped back to level. That's the majority of your increase right there.
so I know we've hired new counsel, but typically what has been the expenditure, Ruth Ellen, on this line over the past, since just your experience? Is it the 50,000, or is it, what is the kind of like the average?
The 1920 year was, I believe, the highest since I've been here. Or, the end of 19 and then going into, end of 1819 and then going into 1920. It's typically in the 20 to 30 range.
What is the expenditure this year, Brian, do you know?
Final expended last year was $50,492.
No,
But that included that summer period where there was a higher legal,
right, but what have we done to date on this budget?
to date this budget. Okay. That is in the budget docs that were shared.
I mean, I'm
Going back.
Be under.
Yep, November,
Gotta go back a few meetings, right?
yep, Summit 2. Financials. Almost there. And this is under... It's coming up.
This year, so as of
You got it? Okay.
November 1st, we are at $13,348.
No, better than I expected. I guess my question, do we have a policy on how the prior boards may have adopted as far as utilizing, how they utilize this service? When and how?
It's been different in different years. The first year that I was here, the board had not actually determined which legal firm they were using, and I did not have an attorney to contact. The next year, they did the agreement with Soul Kidder, and it was typically as directed by the board, or if a question came up, I would usually call Joel, talk it over, and go to legal if we needed to.
Well, for me, I think, we may want to consider having a formal policy to go forward with a new attorney. And I would be inclined to, I'll make a motion to subtract $10,000 out of the legal line in the proposed budget, of this budget, which would bring it down to $82,723, and move it forward till later in the budget process.
Okay, so you're taking it out of that legal line?
Yeah, just take it to 25. We had budgeted 23.5.
No, we budgeted 35, so you're knocking it down to 25.
I was going to the prior budget,
Okay,
the prior year.
so, yep.
Just, and then, like I said, in discussion, if I think would make sense to have a policy for staff to use, and for us to kind of keep us on a tighter budget, at least this year, especially we have new legal counsel, and we also have a tight budget. So I think it might have
I'll second for discussion.
I think hopefully it would force us to control this line and make sure that we stay on top budgetarily with a new contractor.
So
Go ahead.
you've got two pieces going on. One is to amend the budget, and the other is
This is
to
just
have a
discussion.
policy of,
Right,
of how
that's
you're
just
gonna run
discussion.
that.
I don't
Okay.
want to belabor this because we're just
Okay.
talking budget. So
All
that's
right,
why
I just wanted to
throwing
make
it
sure that
out.
I wasn't trying to
So
roll
my
that in.
motion only is regarding the budget line item.
Okay.
Any other discussion from the other members regarding reducing that line back down to 25,000?
I just have a discussion point
Go ahead.
before we move it forward. We talked about the school treasurer line, and I see that there's a $200 increase in that. I believe the intent of that $200 increase was to allow, when we have a deputy treasurer come in, to allow us a resource to pay him or her. So what I'd like to see is a line for our school treasurer at $1,200, and the reason being is that salary is set by the legislative body.
And then set the
And
others.
then underneath have a subcategory that if we need it to compensate a deputy treasurer, we have that line to compensate. So the treasurer gets, in this case, her full stipend, and we have a stipend to go to if she's unavailable.
So you'd like that separated?
I'd like that separated out as a separate line, so it's not confusing in the budget process.
Yeah, I'll accept that proposed change, but I guess we're going to need to have, I don't know if we have a policy of when that happens and why. So if we're going to do that, I know we've talked about it to make sure people are compensated for their time, and it's just whether or not, we might have to formalize that a little bit.
Right. I thought you were asking about when we make a separate line. I was going to say, well, now's probably a good time to do that, but I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we
I
don't
think-
lose sight of it, that
I
we
think-
defined some guidance for that.
Okay. Yep.
Because 3 boards down, they may say, well, this is supposed to go to that person, so just give it to them.
Right.
And they could do that, but that's not how we were proposing it. We were proposing it if it was needed. Any discussion on the motion, which is to,
Just real quick on the policy, just as a quick comment, what I think has been past practice is take the $1,200, divide it by 52 weeks, and if a deputy treasurer comes in, that's their stipend for the week. And we pay it out of that $200 line. Does that make sense? Treasurer is a treasurer from July 1 to June 30th. It's 52 weeks, so divide $1,200 by 52 weeks. And for every week a deputy treasurer has to come in, that's their stipend.
what happens when a deputy has to fill in for more than the $200?
Then we have to find it, just like we had before, find it within the budget.
Okay, so you're saying it would just be an overage?
I think the the $200 number is pretty much an average of what we've had to,
So it's, if I divide the 1,200 by 52, it's 2308.
Right. So $200 would go like
10 weeks, 10 times.
9 to 10 weeks, okay. Yeah, I think that would Yeah, I'm okay with the discussion. I mean, we'll have to develop, a policy, but I didn't know if I was thinking how much time that would be. And you're right, if it was served longer than that, we would just have to find it somewhere. Any other discussion on the motion, which is to reduce that budget by 10,000 and split out the deputy school treasurer? Not hearing any discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Moving on next to the SAU office, we have a bottom line. We have an increase of $67,000. And Ellen, I don't know if you quickly point us to the areas of increase besides pay and benefits?
Contingency fund.
Yep, contingency fund is 50,000 of that.
That is something that we planned based upon a discussion because we were no longer going to do the 2.5%?
Correct. And I put 50,000 in as a placeholder. I don't know that that's what you wanted to continue with, but that was so that I could build the line and for discussion point.
Now, the total contingency that the 2.5% was what, 170,000?
Roughly, yep.
Discussion? Tim?
I do. I think it makes more sense out of to reduce the budget, Fund 10 by 50,000, but look at setting up a warrant article that little by little we, 50,000 from fund balance this year, and to establish that warrant article and add to that emergency fund. The other thing that we've got to talk about is, when you hear it on the town side, there's a certain number within the budget that we're never going to be able to spend this budget down to zero. So do we have that cushion within this budget and this final number that we come up to operate for this school year from July 1 to June 30th? Because our original Fund 10 is reduced by $700,000 ballpark. I don't have the number, right here on my screen.
Roughly there.
So if we pass a budget tonight, pretty close to your projected recommended budget, is that enough money for you as superintendent to run our schools? Or are we going to be in trouble because we've cut back that buffer that we've had in the past?
I did not include buffer here.
Right, but that's a pretty big question. I agree with you, Tim. I think we should take the 50,000 out of this line item and put it on a warrant article and explain to the taxpayers during deliberative session what we did and why we did it. And I believe that they will agree with us funding it differently and getting rid of some of the restrictions that we were bound by when we held it out as emergency funds on that 2.5%.
So are you looking to set up a separate capital reserve then? Or an expendable trust?
I would do more, I'm going to have to look at the expendable trust that we're allowed to do, but I was looking more an expendable trust so that if all of a sudden a heating system went in one of our schools and we're not budgeted for it, we've got a contingency fund to go to. And heating's the bad idea because we've got a lot of building funds, but...
Well, we also have a heating expendable trust as well.
But it
yeah,
could be
I
any
understand what
number
you're
of
saying,
things.
yeah.
some type of emergency that comes in that we have to...
Right.
That's where the warrant article comes in this year, where you're allowed 2.5% by law.
Already because it's passed.
But we do a warrant article, you can extend it up to 5. Doesn't mean you got to use it, but you have it if you need it. Say you're building up funds and you're like, oh, wait a minute, I hit the cap. You know a big expense is coming.
Yeah, I saw the changes in the law in September. My opinion is this isn't the year to do that with COVID going on the town and whatever. I'd rather rebuild the emergency fund now up to the 170,000 and then next year.
Go over that. I'm just saying the law, just the warrant article that allows you to go higher.
That allows you to do, but not to do it.
It does, but I think if we present it this way, and I'm only talking my gut, we're going to get the money. Because the taxpayer's going to be understanding of what we did to fund the teacher's contract. if we go above that in a year that's going to be bad on both sides of the tax bill, it's not the year to propose that,
Yeah.
in my feeling.
Yeah, I agree with Tim. I think that would be, that may not, people would be concerned. And our intent here is to have the same tax impact as what it was, but have more flexibility and control over that when we need it. Because right now, as you said, some of those requirements are pretty restrictive and all the paperwork to go through, instead of us just saying, this is the money that we've held in a contingency for emergency. It's been taxpayer funded, and it's there if we need it. And it's clearly defined what it is. We need to be the agents to expend, and however the best way to set that up based upon DOE and DRA, and maybe it's just a DRA question.
Well, we have the option of either including it in the same warrant article saying to create the fund and make us agents to
Yeah.
expend, or to separate those out.
Well, I would put them together, that way it's clear. We'll raise this money, create this thing. If you do it separate, then one vote could pass, the other one, they both need to pass to have it work, so you might as well have them together. Because if they, yeah.
In this case, normally I wouldn't do it that way, but in this case, it makes sense. And I'd be more open to the next meeting, when we do warrant articles, for you guys bringing us, you have the concept, find the funding mechanism that we can do it under, and kind of bring that back so that we're raising and appropriating the money, and we're agents to expend.
So are you looking to raise and appropriate? Are you looking to take from unexpended fund balance?
I would
Because
use, I would use fund balance. We're going to have the fund balance. And again, if we raise, the raise and appropriate, particularly in this year, it's going to be a tough year.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we should take it from fund balance, but we
Still
use.
looking at the 50?
Yep, I'm okay with that. I think we need to do that sparingly. In the last town meeting, on both the town side and the school side, that was used quite often. I don't know if I'm in favor to that extent this year, but in this case, I think it makes sense. So I don't know, do we have a motion on the table for this section?
No, there
We
is
didn't?
not. It's been discussed.
I'll make a motion to approve minus the 50,000 amendment.
I'll second.
So removing the contingency fund.
Right, to warrant article. Any discussion? Not hearing any discussion, what? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
So moving on next to salary and benefits, school year 22.
And these are included other places all the way through. So whether you want to do these separately or just,
Table them.
yeah, because this is a breakout that is absolutely captured everywhere else.
Right, and in this area, it's proposed $172,000 decrease on 12.5 million,
Correct.
12.4 million, depending on which number you look at. Okay, there's a motion at the table.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
So in tabling, you're just saying you're not going to deal with this
We're
part?
forwarding in part of the budget process.
Okay, got it,
because,
okay.
like you said, it's captured.
Just making sure I
Motion
was clear.
passes.
Thank you.
Henry Wilson?
Henry Wilson, school year 2022.
Actually, this isn't the order that I put them in, it's just it alphabetized them, which is why you're kind of jumping around here.
I'm just going down through the list.
Got it.
That way I don't miss something.
Yep, nope, that's fine.
So we're looking at an increase of 362,552.74 over what we budgeted last year, which is up about 200,000 from the year before. So what educational benefit is the 362,000 offering us at this particular school?
Well, in salaries allowed, we went down 92.5, but we went up in retirement. Those are the two biggest ones that kind of stick out.
So we have,
Consumable books.
yep, consumable books is a large increase, reading supplies, and those are both in support of math and reading, both needed as we're looking at moving forward with those.
Contracted services.
So on the consumable books, are we talking paperback?
Workbook type, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
At what point, with the investment that was made in computers, at what point are you going to see some type of percentage in transition between paper to computer? Or a combination of both?
I'm hoping soon, as we solidify exactly where we're going with some of these programs, I would like to look at the digital series so that we can, I mean, we have the one-to-one. If a kid only has to carry the Chromebook as opposed to 5 or 6 books back and forth, that just makes sense. One of the things that I did run into in another district that has kind of become a caveat for me is oftentimes they will try to sell a 6 to 8 year digital license, which sounds like it's a large cost savings, but as platforms shift in between, sometimes you can't always access the full through the entire life of the subscription. So really to look at a textbook digital series that goes out much beyond 4 years, I would want to really look at it carefully, because then you start looking into, you know, we've kept it just because we've paid for it, maybe not because it's the best thing that we have. But right now, these pieces give us some flexibility back and forth between platforms. We can certainly look and see if those are comparable if we were to look at the digital pieces. Right now, I think to do the licensing for what we would need may end up being a little bit more than this right out of the gate.
Okay. I'm going to shift gears. The largest increase I see is $328,000 in salaries for teachers under special ed. Why do we have that increase? Maybe, is it correct? Is this
Can you give me a line?
35? Is that correct? Is it 320,000,
For,
8,000?
when I do all the numbers, a lot of the people for special ed were assigned to Henry Wilson. Although I think we're a little,
I think
we
we're
have
a
some
lot
extra
top-heavy
assigned.
there.
We have some extra assigned because they do, sometimes they move with a student and they'll go with it, with things like that. But it all came out in the bottom line of all the salaries. It still came out to a small increase because the other schools would take a hit. It went down in Valley View, or went down at the high school,
Okay.
went up in the middle.
So you're saying that this is
We have
based upon where the services are being allocated, or
Right.
as far as budgetarily, that's why it's there, but you're saying it's not a $328,000 increase in special ed.
Correct.
Just how it's being accounted for. So in this budget, 362,000 of that, 328,000 of that 362 is how we're accounting for special ed.
Yes. And as I'm looking at the student services, did that come out the same way here?
So we should see a subsequent decrease in another budget, say the high school?
Well, if you look at
Valley
the special, student services budget that you had already approved, let's go back to the first 3 lines. Valley View shows a decrease of 65,000. The high school shows a decrease of 77,000. And Henry Wilson shows an increase. So between the two, you're looking at an increase of about
$250,000.
yeah, that's still, where does that come out?
So, just following what
We've got
Brian said,
that's down a para.
where is it balancing out?
Yep, hold on.
Not that the budget committee will ask this question.
No, I want to double check that. I suspect we may have somebody who was classified as special ed who shouldn't have been as well. Let me double check.
But either way, it would be, say if you had a teacher that was wrongly classified, I don't see the reduction in, well, maybe there's some.
There's a reduction in regular ed salaries of 159,000, another of 92,000. I think that's where you're finding some of your differences right there. We've got some folks who are classified as special ed who should probably be general education.
So I'll make a motion to table this until it's clarified.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Not hearing any, all in favor?
See, if you go to the high school, your teacher special ed salaries are down 77.5.
Right, but the two decreases only come to like 130,000, this
But
is
if you look
328.
at the
But that's the total, that's not the, I don't
The
think that's the increase.
decreases in general education are 159,000, 92,000, and 103,000. I think I have special education
It may
teachers
be.
who are
Right, so we're just
incorrectly
tabling it so you
classified.
can dig down into
Yep.
it. Instead of trying to resolve it right this second.
Absolutely.
Trying to get through this list. What are we on next? Farmington High School proposed. And that is a decrease of $500,000. Where are the decreases? I'm sure we're not going to spend 500,000 less.
One of these I see,
Telephone's a big one.
yes, but we do have in line 15 tuition regular ed high school, that needs to be included. So the 14.4 needs to be in there for this year.
Tuition special ed,
No, tuition regular education,
but tuition special ed is down 259.
yes.
We have students aging out. So there's half of it right there.
Say that again?
We have students in
What line?
special, 61. We have a couple students that are aging out, they're gonna graduate, so their tuition won't be paid anymore.
So again, remember, this is.
Okay, so that's half of it.
This shows up in two places because this is special education that's also in the other place. This just gives a snapshot of the high school.
Okay.
And then,
So some of these salary and benefits, like say, for a behavioral specialist, is 55.
that also shows up in special education.
Teacher salaries, special ed down 77.5.
But that position's not going away, it's just being accounted for differently in the budget?
Correct.
Yeah.
So is there any other corrections that you see gotta be made, Ruth Ellen, besides that 14,000?
That's the one that jumps out at me, Charlie. That's a tuition payment that needs to be included for the next year and the year after.
Tuition payment for a student or a service?
Student out of district.
Okay.
Yep,
I wasn't sure.
yep.
Any other things people want clarification on in this budget?
Good with it.
So I'll make a motion, table it till it's corrected. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, moving along to next thing, well, that's SAP funding. Facilities and maintenance portion. So this is a decrease.
This is a decrease, but the majority of the decreases you're going to find are,
Monies.
the roofs are included here. Also, you have the projects for the lobbies that are included here as well. So
That
those
was
are,
included in last year's budget. That won't be in this year's budget?
it won't be in this year's, but it's in the current budget, but it will show it, because it was a
Right.
line for it this year, it will show as a deficit.
So like the two line items, 56 and 57, one's 157, the other's 437.
Yep, those are the two
Correct.
roofs.
Those are the roofs. And then the, where were the other two? The site improvements just above that, 53, 54, 55. Those are also, yeah, they're not in this year. Those are the lobby pieces that are coming off. Those were encumbered forward so that we could
Okay.
finish.
So the three line items that I see that are major increase, of course, is janitorial, is regarding the extra cleaning that we have. I think it's 22, hold on. We have $66,000 increase in custodial supplies for 3 schools.
Correct.
And that money is coming back through the CARES Act.
There's no guarantee that all of that will, because we have looked at what we're spending out through, we have the same finite amount, we can spend it through September 30. If we haven't spent it on other things up through the end of the school year, certainly those are pieces that can be purchased under that. We've got to see what our expenses are going to be for this year.
So is this line more than we need based upon what we see far as status of a vaccine and so forth? Are we budgeting more than we should in this? I guess that's the question.
If I had an absolutely clear crystal ball, it would be easier. I don't. It may be more than we need. It frankly might not be enough.
Yeah. I checked mine today, mine's pretty smoky.
Mine's crystal clear.
Okay.
Let me ask you a question for concept, and we see this done, we did it last year in some of our cuts. We're really not gonna know till we get closer to June, and it's too late. Let's take the extra money out. If we have to purchase supplies or refresh our supplies for cleaning at the end of the school year, we can do that. And we can fill up our closets, so we have plenty of canned goods in the closet.
So you're referring to knocking this back down and taking it, if we need to, out of undesignated fund balance?
At the end of or take it out of this year's budget.
Or basically, he's saying that if we get to the end of April and it looks like we have those things that we can still expend on this year's budget, to spend it in this year's budget against next year's budget.
I'm okay with that. Discussion? So what would you suggest taking it down to?
Zero increase. Just take that projected, what is it, $60,000 increase right out. And if we have to spend $60,000 in May or June, then we'll do it.
Well, I'll propose we reduce it 60, which would actually leave it an increase of about 25% on each line. So it'd be taking down 60 and going from 8 to 10. Because the prior year, we spent 11.
I'm okay with that.
So going to 8 may not be unrealistic because prior years, we've spent more than that.
And so what's the line number, Charlie?
105,
Thank you.
106, 107.
Got it.
You want to go to 10,000? Is that what you said?
Yes. Did you make a motion?
No, I'm going off your motion.
So I'll make a motion to reduce those to 10,000
Second.
with the discussion that we should, like Tim said, and get to the end of the year, if we need it, we should get it. Any other discussion?
My only discussion is, can we get that on a schedule now, so we don't miss it with everything going forward and come May or June? Do we have a calendar within the district that you can, on a meeting, say, discuss cleaning supplies out of this year's budget?
We will have one now.
Let's start one.
Yes, we will. It's probably a good idea.
Reminder calendar.
You know?
Any other discussion on the motion? Not hearing any. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
So
Moving
would you
down.
like that for April 15th or sooner?
April 15th, I think, is a great date.
Okay.
I'm not really. I think that's the worst day in the calendar myself.
For this purpose, Charlie.
Oh, that purpose.
You can do it on April 20th, which is out of Hitler's birthday.
Do either fall on a Monday?
I don't know. We can have a special meeting. We're gonna be looking for one.
Why don't we just do it April 1st, April Fools? Okay. Enough said. Going on to the next budget, instruction and curriculum. We have a proposed increase of $35,000. And $45,000 of that is aligned under curricular adoption. And there's some substantial changes in this budget. So,
Because we are looking at needing to adopt both
Right.
a math and an ELA curriculum across the board, we're looking at placeholder for one of those, knowing that to try to do two of those in 1 year, this isn't the year to do that. Certainly, if we can come in under that, we will. Some of the pieces that we looked at, one of those to remain with our current, which we weren't necessarily sold on doing, but we got a quote to see what it would be. It was double that even with the discounts they gave us for staying with them. And we said, no. So we are looking to see, there are other options that are going to get us closer in this range, that are going to do a better job of what we're looking to do. But we don't have a hard and fast quote yet, because we are still in the process of looking at not only the strategic design process, but some very important staff examination of those materials and weighing in on how they're going to be used before we just go.
okay. So now that you lost me.
Sorry, backing up.
I don't want you to go through it again, but going forward, if we're gonna put this forward to the budget committee, and we're gonna have to speak to this, I think we're gonna have to be able to boil it down to something they're gonna be able to readily absorb. I'm in support of it, but they're gonna look at that and go, there's a $45,000 line item we've never seen before. What's it for? Explain it to me. And they need to be able to grasp what we're trying to accomplish so that they don't go, no.
Fully understood, and I am very confident that Misty and I can do that.
But my only question in this budget, and I just want to make sure that we address our intent, is we've talked for months on a learning management system. I think the last meeting, Misty might have alluded to, we've got this ideal solution right now that we're kind of leaning towards, but we're going to look at them all, whatever. Is that budgeted, or is that something we're going to look in the CARES Act to buy this year?
I would like to try to do that out of CARES Act funding if we can. I want to make sure that when we purchase it,
That's not in this 45?
it is not in the 45, and that when we purchase it, we're purchasing at a time that it makes sense to implement. I don't want to purchase it now when we still have some foundational work to do before we get there.
No, I get that. I just want to make sure it doesn't slip through the cracks.
Nope, that
As we're looking at
is-
the curriculum, I'm not seeing it here.
Nope,
So I'd like
and that's why.
somewhere a placeholder to make sure that when the time is right, that happens.
That is plastered to our wants list.
Any other discussion on this section of the budget?
I'm good.
I'll make a motion to forward as proposed.
Second.
Not hearing any discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, motion passes unanimously. Moving along to behavioral services and ESOL.
English as a second language.
English as a second language, good. Now I know what that means.
Or ESL is English second language.
This is a slight decrease of $4,000.
For ESOL, we've had fewer students who have needed the additional language services. While that could change, we might have someone else with higher needs move into the district. We felt fairly confident in being able to make that change. We have not had the influx here in district of speakers of other languages that some of the towns to our south have had.
I'm seeing a $60,300 number for contracted services.
Ruth Ellen, can I jump in for a second?
My only question in this budget.
That's up
Just want to make sure that we
to the chairman.
address our
That's
intent.
Misty.
I know, I'm waiting for the echo to stop.
It's on learning management system.
Someone is watching the YouTube video and needs to mute.
Could somebody please mute that?
There's an ideal solution right now that we're kind of leaning
Please
toward.
mute your mic, Misty.
Whatever. Is that budgeted, or is that something we're going to look in the CARES Act to buy this year?
I would like to try to do that out of CARES Act funding if we can. I want to make sure that
Misty, if you're looking,
it is not in the 45.
Could somebody please mute?
Technology line.
Purchasing at a time that it makes sense to
Misty?
implement. I don't want to purchase it now when we still have some
need you
time
to mute
to before we get there.
Oh, I get that.
The
I just
YouTube
want to make sure
portion.
there's a track. So
Nope, that
as we're looking at
is-
the curriculum, I'm not seeing it here.
Nope,
So like
that's fine.
somewhere a placeholder to make sure that
Ruth Ellen,
when the time is right,
go
that that
over
happens.
on the mute key on that keyboard.
We are, that is transferred
right.
to our wants list.
Right next to that.
Yeah, but they're going to be able to hear us. We got two board members.
Misty, are you there?
Yeah, I am. I'm sorry. I had YouTube on and so I could hear you better. I had to turn that off and come back over here. So I just wanted to chime in on that. Just so that you know, Tim, in terms of the learning management system, that actually would never come under curriculum. It would be under technology. It would be under the same line as our student information system is if we decided to go with that. So that's why you wouldn't see it in these lines. But just so that you know, the principals, Matt and Blake and I are still working on with the teachers exactly what the resources are they want to purchase within that sort of caveat of the $40,000. And they have some pretty good ideas, and we're just still finalizing. I think we got to get some quotes once the teachers make their final decisions on what they really want. I just wanted to be sure they sort of had a true window to work in. And we also put that line in there because normally when we buy some of these curriculum resources, large programs, often I think in past practice, what was needed for each school was budgeted underneath each school, and we decided to try to make that cleaner by when we take on a brand new resource for the district, it's under that one line, so it's very transparent, if that makes sense. So I think, Ruth Ellen, if I'm correct, this curriculum adoption line we put in this year, that hasn't been a line that's been there before, right?
No, it hasn't, which is why Charlie was saying we need, and the YouTube is behind where we are, so you're got a lag time of about 4 minutes of discussion. Charlie was just saying we need to make sure that we can very clearly articulate going forward to the budget committee what the purpose of that is, and I assured him that you and I could do that.
Yeah, I did hear that part. That's why I wanted to kind of chime in and make sure you knew that we were working on it behind the scenes.
Great.
Okay, thank you, Misty. Now, getting back, Tim, you pointed out a line
Yeah,
item.
I'm on line 21. It's 10-1240-53308, contracted services, $60,300 that wasn't there in the budget we're in now. Is
Along
that-
with line 22, which is $75,000.
Correct.
Right.
If you look up above, the salaries and benefits from those, we're looking to contract for Henry Wilson and the high school, the positions that would have been up above. So if you see salaries, behavior services,
Are these
and then the
positions we
associated benefits.
had?
They are
And weren't
positions that
filled?
we have, jump in, Diana, go ahead.
With your permission.
Please.
So we have had those positions budgeted for a number of years. The problem has been filling them and keeping them filled. So since we could not find people that were qualified enough to fill those positions and willing to stay, we opted to do it through a contracted service. That's in place this year at Henry Wilson and also in place at Farmington High School. The paraeducators we supply for those rooms, but Constellations will supply the instructor for that room. So I've been funding that through the IDEA grant, the majority of it. And that's kind of how we've been able to do it this year because we've taken the salary that's available and the benefits that are available. It costs a little bit more than the salary and the benefits that are in our general fund, so I take that up in the IDEA grant and cover it that way.
But we're not picking up any retirement portion.
I'm sorry?
We wouldn't be picking up any retirement.
No.
So
No.
it's more, but it may not be as much as it looks.
Yeah.
Yeah, we take out the benefits and like,
Right.
So, just if we're asked at the Budget Committee, Diana, what functions does that contracted position provide to our students?
So they're responsible for doing evaluations for our students. That might be a functional behavior assessment, that might be kind of a practical functional assessment as well, which is kind of to see what exactly is the behavior that how do they trigger a particular behavior, which is a little more specific than a functional behavior assessment. They write the behavior plans. They go into the classrooms and they check the level of fidelity with which the plans are being implemented. So they'll work with the paraeducator, they'll work with the classroom teachers and the teams of teachers to make sure that people are following the plan appropriately. They do participate in all of our team meetings, like any special education person will or staff would. They provide consulting time to the building administrators to really build up a team around the kid. They do also consult with families just to kind of check in with them and say, well, here's what we're using at school, and this is what seems to be working. So it's really been a great service to us. They've had some really well-trained people, and honestly, I think that's why our out-of-district numbers are going down, because when we've been able to put this program in place and kind of begin to build it, we've been able to maintain kids that might otherwise really kind of blow up with behaviors that we could not continue to manage. So it's not a guarantee, but boy, it's gotten us in a really good place at this point.
For Budget Committee purposes, can we kind of add some notes, because you've got a big zero and then you've got a 60,000, you got another zero and a 75,000. So somebody looking at this from the Budget Committee, just like I did, and I sit on the board, even though I'm fairly new, it's going to have questions. If we add a comment in there as to what we're funding with those new lines.
There are comments in there under notes. It says need to add funds from line literally from associated with the position, transfer from, and then it also includes funding for community partners counseling services. So the entire amount is not for just that contracted service for the behavioral position. We can make that more explicit.
I would make it clearer.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I read it and multiple times and had no clue.
Okay.
Because it starts out with need to add the funds.
Right.
From the benefits
Okay.
line. It's a note to yourself, but basically this may start off with a contracted service, replacing a in-house staff position as
We will
as the
expand
front
on the
end.
notes.
Sure.
To point them into exactly what's happening, and then the rest you can fill in discussion, or maybe the rest of the note.
Sure.
Anyone else with questions on this section? I will make a motion to move forward in the budget process as presented.
A second.
Any discussion? Not hearing discussion. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye. No.
Josh is a no. Joel?
I was an aye, sorry, I didn't hear my thing.
Okay, so the motion passes 4-1. Moving along next to athletics. And at the bottom, it is a decrease of 22,000. What is the cause of the decrease? Just shown different spots of the budget, or because it doesn't look like a decrease in a lot of these lines?
Mostly equipment, it's about
equipment, but
6,000 in equipment.
But also, you're going to see, there's a $14,000 decrease because the health insurance, rather than being split between athletic director, it was included in the line for the dean of students as one, rather than split here. So that's a good portion of the decrease right there.
Okay. So it's really not a decrease in total expenditures, just in this area,
Correct.
picked up somewhere else.
Pretty much level funded
So-
outside of that.
Last year, or earlier this year, when dealing with some of the cuts, athletics took a hit on some of the equipment, or we pre-bought some of the equipment, decreased some of the lines in the budget process. With the recommendations that are in this, is this going to set us well for the year? We're not going to have any shortfalls? Plenty of uniforms for the kids. We're going to have the equipment refreshed that we need to be refreshed.
It should. It puts us back on track for the most part. Eric, do you want to jump in on the uniforms? Not sure if he's still there.
Yeah, I'm still here. I didn't catch that first part, Tim, about that.
Last year, during the budget process, when we looked at the $770,000 cuts, one of the areas we hit was athletics, and there was some reductions in some lines during those cuts. I just want to make sure that this proposed budget at $149,000 serves the student population that participates in sports, well. Do we need, are our uniforms fresh? Do we have to order uniforms? Do we have everything within this budget to run our sports program?
Yeah, I thought what I put forward is going to meet the needs of, what the necessary needs are for our programs. I think, even comes down to uniforms, we're looking at finally get a handle on that cycle on what we need. So I think it meets the needs.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or discussion?
Make a motion to move it forward.
I'll second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
So, what do we have? Is that it?
The bulk of it. The only thing that I think we should probably talk about in addition,
All right.
some of the positions will be in non-public again, but
Right.
I think, is this year the year that we want to look at potentially merit-based increases for our non-union staff? Or do we want to start that discussion this year and work it into our next year's budget?
I think we need to come up, for me, we need to come up with a percentage for a fixed dollar amount that'll address where we feel those increases need to be. I mean, if we've tabulated, Ruth Ellen had given us some numbers.
Yep.
On that, what those percentages would cost. And I'm okay with certainly discussing it now where it's appropriate in public. Some of it may be non-publics, but most of it will probably be in public.
At this point, we're not discussing evaluations, we're not getting into that.
Right, when I talk about non-public, I'm talking about, we've got some positions out there.
Correct,
that
yeah,
we-
that's
That's
different.
totally different.
Right.
But, this, from what I'm seeing in the budget process, there's 2% raises that are built in there. Do we want to ask the policy committee to come up with a policy on merit-based increases? And what does that process look like? And then what do we need for a number to support that for our non-union personnel?
Now, that spreadsheet, Ruth Ellen, you gave us, that was in last week's folder?
Yes, it was. It's in that one in the sensitive docs, I believe, yeah.
But before we go there, I just want to make a running tally here, what we need to address left on the budget. So we have some proposed or some requested increases in staffing
Yes,
and expenditures. It's in a short list here somewhere. That's one.
that was in last week's.
Yeah,
yes.
and then the second one is discussion regarding a dollar amount for merit-based increases for for salaried employees not in a collective bargaining agreement.
Some of those are hourly, so it's those who are not in a collective bargaining agreement.
And what else? We got warrant articles.
Warrant articles, those are really the pieces that are left.
So we have 3. Warrant articles we think we can, or could address after we get the initial submission of the budget to the budget committee, which is due
Yeah.
December.
Typically, what I do in the budget presentation, and again, you can certainly direct me otherwise, is I let them know these are the warrant articles that we have under discussion currently.
Right. I'm fine with that because if we try to solidify those tonight, we're not going to get it done. But if we're going to put forth a budget for the budget committee for the 9th, and today's the 23rd, and we don't have another
I need to
meeting,
have it to them the first so that
The
they have
first.
it prior.
then we've tabled a couple things for clarification. Some things we've amended, but we need to address items 1 and 2, 1 being the requested areas, and 2 being the monies for potential merit-based increases. Those we have to get done, right? To put forth a base budget for the budget committee.
Correct.
So, I don't know which one we want to start with first, but we need to tackle those, get those done, and then we can go on for additional work. So, if we go back to the last meeting, because we were talking about it, which was merit-based increases workbook. The
And the
last
majority
meeting,
of that discussion had been in non-public because we were looking, some of that was because it was looking at individuals. And again, if we're looking at overall,
if you feel it's more appropriate for non-public, that's fine.
either way, I mean, we're not getting into evaluations tonight. If you're asking me to give you a percentage that would allow some latitude without going too far, or?
I just got some questions on the chart, and
Okay.
I think this is public information because it doesn't pertain to individual employees. As I look at the top of the chart, administrators, it's given us a budgeted number of a little over $1 million, and what 1.5%, 2%, 3% of that number would be. So what my proposal in merit-based increases is, you could have a superintendent that gets a 6% raise. But people within that other might get 2, 3, or 4%. So we kind of need to calculate a number district-wide for non-union people, and it's difficult for us to do it. We're going to have to hear it from you, because you know who the movers and shakers are, and you know who, if we have any, the slackers are. And that's kind of where I think we have to balance.
Well, my discussion on this is, to add to that, is we've asked some administrators and staff to take on additional roles and responsibilities
Yes, we have.
that they're not accustomed to. And we've made some adjustments based upon those requests, but based upon their performance in those newly assigned tasks, they may merit additional increases.
I would agree. Yeah.
So for me, I'm going to put it out there, my number is 4 or 5%. Not saying that's what we're going to give, but if we're going to put a number down on a budget, we need to be able to have the room to compensate those individuals that we've given more tasks or are asking more of, that we may have only given them an incremental increase to take on the challenge. So,
And actually, what I had calculated out came to about 4.5%.
so that's where,
So
if I'm
district-
throwing out a percentage, it's one of those.
So district-wide, budget for the 5%, and if we may spend less on 1 or 2 individuals, we may spend more on some
And
of
we
the
may only
top.
spend a cumulative of 3%. But
Right.
if you don't have that in the budget, then we're going to get into a situation where,
My question on the chart is, if we're looking at the 5% column, we already have 2% built into our Fund
Correct.
10. So in order to do a 5%, do we need to appropriate the 3%? And sometimes, you gotta be careful
Right.
adding percentages, because sometimes those don't.
These numbers, you're talking about the colored graph there?
Yep.
Those numbers are from $0. So.
So those,
So if you said you wanted 5%, the 96,636 at the bottom, that is a true 5%. That's not with the 2% already figured in.
so what he's given you is a 1.5, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. The 2 is what was budgeted here. So if we were going to go up to the 5,
it'd be
then
an
you just
additional-
add the difference, and it's truly good because it's already figured.
So the additional would be, if we're budgeted in our current budget, that we've just kind of tentatively approved, 2%, that would be an increase on this chart of $38,000.
Correct.
Approximately.
Yes.
If we, to increase that to 5%, that would be an increase of $58,000.
Correct. Yes.
You are
So
reading
really,
that
to
correctly.
accomplish that from what is in this budget, it would be an increase of approximately $60,000.
That's what I was getting to.
Yep.
We're not appropriating the 96 in the column, because we already have 2% factored into those raises.
Right.
Already in the budget.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, I'm good with that. Do you want to make a motion to appropriate the 60,000 for merit-based increases for non-union personnel?
Just do it as a lump sum, and then,
I'll make that motion.
Can I just do that?
Did you?
Yes.
No, you're fine.
I don't think you did.
You're fine.
That's why I took it.
Okay.
Do you want to second it?
No.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Josh, saved by, any discussion? My discussion is this gives us some latitude. If we don't spend it, we won't. If we don't need to spend it, we won't. But we've asked some people, we've given some challenges to some staff, and we may have some people that are not being compensated for the contribution, and I think we need to have some funds set aside to do that. Any other discussion? Not hearing any. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Stan and Joel,
Aye.
coming slow.
What's the motion again?
The motion is to basically add to the budget a line item for an additional $60,000 for merit-based increases for non-union staff, on top of the 2%. And
This is for only when you ask people to do something extra, so an extra stipend, or is this?
No.
A system to set up merit-based pay?
no, because we don't have a system set up yet, so at this point, it may come forward as a recommendation by Ruth Ellen to where she feels people need to be adjusted, either based upon what we've asked for some of the changes that we made, or that she may come forward and say the pay is not in line with what is customary. Right now, we don't have a policy to implement merit-based, so in essence, this is just a dollar amount.
we have a line for this, under salaries and benefits. It's non-negotiated increases.
So so this would be going into what line item?
Actually, it's a non-negotiated increase, that's for the SAU, but we could mirror that line in
Okay.
the other
So we create a line for
categories.
that. Do you understand the intent? Stan?
Yeah, I'm against merit increases, so I'm going to vote no.
Okay. So we've got, Tim?
I'm an aye.
Okay. Motion passes 4-1.
I would recommend putting that under 2,900 where our other kind of lump sum pieces are. So that way it's in one place and can be disaggregated out rather than trying to figure out how much of that might go to.
That's fine. I don't have
Okay.
any problem with where you want to put it.
Okay.
Is anyone else? Okay, so that only leaves one other topic that we have to get done tonight to formalize a basic budget for the Budget Committee, and that is the proposed, let me see if I can find it from the last meeting.
It is in the regular drive,
Last
under the
meeting?
budget docs, yes.
Budget docs. Budget requests.
Yes.
Okay. So, and all of these fall under salary positions.
Correct.
So that will probably be more suited for non-public discussion.
Yes.
On line 2400 of that chart, can we do that first? And ask the principal of Valley View to join us? So I've got some questions on that line item that I'd really like to hear from him.
Okay. So,
Blake, are you available to stay?
Is he right here?
Blake?
Let me see if he's on.
still with us?
I'll text him.
Okay, so at this point, if we have budgetary
he's on,
stuff
he's
that's
on.
going to go into non-public.
Yes, I am.
Thank you, Blake.
Okay, Blake, please stay with us.
I'm available.
Good morning.
So, are there any other business that we need to have before going into non-public?
Were you going to do a second public participation?
At this point, I will open it up for a brief period if somebody wants to comment, but hopefully it can be,
Brief?
people can stay on point. At this point, I'll open
Yes,
it
we
up.
had a couple people online.
Okay, so do we have anybody here for public?
He shook his head.
Okay, that's all right, just giving people in attendance first dibs. Not hearing any, go ahead from online, please give me your name and the street that you live on.
I'd like to make a comment. This is Caitlin McCarthy. Did you need any additional information?
Caitlin McCarthy,
Yeah.
do you need any additional information?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay, I just came on tonight to address the recent vote to return to complete in-person education, and wanted to make a public comment that I think that is at this time very premature. We have extensive community spread, not only in our town, but in our state, and it's escalating quite rapidly. We also have extensive community spread in our surrounding communities, and it's certainly possible that by the proposed time, we will be able to return to in-person education, but I think that it's very premature to try to vote on something like that or make that kind of decision when we're going in the opposite direction that we should be to be considering that in any way, and it's a serious risk to public safety.
Okay. I'll comment a little bit. I mean, I think from the previous discussion, this board has stated that, we set a goal somewhat, and we're going to be staying abreast of it as we need to, because it is a pretty fluid situation. And some of the things you have stated are absolutely true, and it's probably be on a discussion every meeting until it happens, or doesn't happen. Anyone else?
Let me check. I think Lisa Abbott, did you want to have your hand raised at one point?
Jolene and Sharon want to chime in too, just so you can see that.
I would like to address again the concept of
This is Sharon
the
Morigliano.
2 weeks after Thanksgiving and 2 weeks after Christmas for remote learning.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I did have, I throw this out this, and please don't take it as being facetious, but, what's the possibility? This idea hasn't come up in discussion, but a lot of schools have been doing this, but does it make sense if that's something we would consider, that we would basically shut the schools down for those times and add it to the end of the year, when hopefully we don't have this crisis? Have other districts even considered that? To say,
I've not heard
let's take
anyone
this block
say
of time and just put it on the back and give everybody the time off.
that. I haven't heard. I've heard that they're looking at going remote for that time period, fully remote rather than in person and. I've not heard anyone say they're looking to shut down.
Well, like, from some of the earlier discussion, I'll just discuss it. You know, if there's somebody else that wants to speak, please let me know. Staff could let me know, and I'll shut up. But the thing is, if we're concerned about our educational quality, and we have people that may want to travel, and we have other people, you know, with the infection rate that we have here, there could be concerns. We could have people out quarantined or infected. I mean, is it reasonable to say, let's take this block of time where people want to travel,
Just do an extended vacation?
extended vacation, then we pick up at the end of the year?
We would need,
Hold on, just give me 1 second.
we
Go
would
ahead.
need to look at where that would take us, because remember, the contracts run out June 30 as well. And so right now, our days are scheduled out to, I want to say roughly June 20th. If we just back up, we may fall off the June 30 cliff. So we would need
What
to
ends
look
June
at that.
30th? I missed your comment. What ends?
Employee contracts, teacher contracts?
The teacher and para contracts end June 30th. So if we were to take
But
2
we
weeks
just-
and 2 weeks and push them back, if we're in remote, it doesn't matter because the time is still going. But if we were just to truly take it as a shutdown and have to pick that time up and put it on the end of the year, then we could run into that cliff. I would want to sit down and
Yeah,
do
that would
the
have to
counting.
maybe talk with
Yep.
staff. But go ahead, somebody from public comment.
Is it okay if I comment now?
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Yes, please.
So this is Caitlin McCarthy again. As a parent in the community, I personally would be very comfortable with and would certainly prefer, it's not a concept I had heard before, but the adding on to the vacation time certainly seems like a really safe accommodation to be making, and I'd certainly rather give up some of my summer than put my children or my community at risk at this time of year. But just as an aside, when I was in high school, we had this one winter where there was a tremendous amount of snow days, and the school system that I went to at that time ended up tacking on, I think, 2 hours to the end of every school day in order to make up the learning hours without increasing the number of days in the school year. I don't know if that's a possibility, but that is something, I went to high school at the time, and that is something that they did.
That's interesting. Thank you. Anyone else?
Laurel Vachon would like to speak next.
Go ahead, Laurel.
Hi, Laurel Vachon, Farmington Teachers Association President. I don't believe the teachers want to shut down and have an extended vacation, but what we were suggesting was having an automatic 14-day quarantine after Thanksgiving, coming back for a little bit, and then having it again after Christmas time, because we've been told we can't travel, so we're not going to travel. However, the community will be traveling, and they will have people coming to their house, which is going to put everybody else at risk. So if you have the 14-day remote learning after each holiday, that's kind of making everybody safe. It's kind of guaranteeing that everybody's going to be safe after the holiday, whatever people decide to do. We're not proposing an extended vacation and going till the end of June. That goes against our contract. What we were proposing would be just going remote for those 14 days after each holiday.
Okay.
The next person is Stacy Price has joined us, and she has her hand raised.
Okay, go ahead. This is going to be the last person. Go ahead, Stacy.
I just want to mention that I completely agree with Laurel. I think it makes sense to follow suit with other communities that are taking 2 weeks remote after the holidays. It protects everybody by doing that. Thank you.
Can I just comment on that?
Tim, go ahead.
My comment is it doesn't protect the students that are in our remote system now failing. And until we fix that gap and correct the negatives that we have there, I'm opposed, and I'm not changing my vote.
So at this point, I'm going to thank everyone for attending and thank the public comment. And we're going to move into non-public discussion on our budgetary line items. Also, is Matt still with us?
Castanway?
Matt Castanway?
Yes, I am.
Would it make sense for him to kind of stay available for discussion regarding his classroom teacher that would be in his school.
Can we maybe text him with a,
Sure, I'll text you when we're ready to have you jump in. I'll send you the link, Matt.
we can actually have him probably call in.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, all right, or I'll have you call in. We can do it that way too.
Okay, so with that, I'll make a motion to go into non-public session on RSA 91A32, A, B, and C under personnel.
Oh, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So I'd like to thank everyone and wish everyone a good night.